subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
In place with a ringing sound and went straight to Shubai. Boom! The violent slash mercilessly slashed towards Shubai, who had just stood still. Shubai hastily returned to defense, crossed his hands in front of his body, and took the blow abruptly. Suddenly the ground collapsed, forming a huge, deep pit. Countless dust flew up and was swallowed by the flame cloud in the sky. Shubai, who fights only by instinct, may not be so gorgeous in terms of skills, but often it is surprisingly effective. Before Shendu's second attack fell, the Crimson Cero appeared in front of Shubai, and accompanied by a deafening scream, it bombarded and fell forward. Boom! The burst-like power instantly engulfed Shendu and continued to spread toward the sky, tearing the air and even tearing the flame cloud covering the sky. Such a tragic scene inevitably made Yoruichi and Suifeng a little terrified. The idea of wanting Shendu to be killed and not wanting him to die was constantly fighting in their minds. Only Nilu still has sufficient confidence in Shendu. As Vasto Lord, she knows the power of this level of Cero best. Cero Duo can absorb and bounce Cero. That can only show that the power is far from enough. Can't even hurt her, let alone Shendu. The scene of the flame cloud being torn apart was also watched carefully by Urahara Kisuke and Hirako Shinji, who escaped from the forest of Minos Grande. Really, Urahara Kisuke lowered his bucket hat to prevent it from being blown away by the strong wind. The Vasto Lord named Shendu appeared. He has seen Shendu and Aizen fight before, and he knows very well that the flame cloud that changes the sky is the scene caused by Shendu's ability. And now, Shendu and Shubai are undoubtedly fighting. This also means that when they were fighting Shubai, Shendu had already been watching from the sidelines not far away. What the hell is this guy thinking? Hirako Shinji muttered dissatisfiedly, a little confused about what Shendu was thinking. If Shendu attacked from the dark just now, at least he and Urahara Kisuke would have killed one on the spot. Maybe he didn't bother to do it. Urahara Kisuke said without looking back, "Remember those ghost groups we killed?" Hirako Shinji was stunned, then came back to his senses, stroked his chin, and said thoughtfully, "Is there anything special about imaginary groups?" Urahara Kisuke sighed softly and said helplessly, "Decades have passed, and you have become a little slack, Hirako. Some of them chanted His Majesty's name before they died. This also means that this so-called His Majesty Shendu has most likely ruled the entire Hueco Mundo and has become the real king of the virtual circle." In an instant, Hirako Shinji's eyes widened, and the originally carefree face was gradually filled with shock. In the forest of Minos Grande, the red light gradually receded. Shendu propped one hand in front of his body, and black smoke rose from his palm. Other than that, there are no daily injuries. The hasty Cero is simply not enough to break the defense. Fighting on instinct alone seems to have merit. The corner of Shendu's mouth grinned, and a dangerous smile appeared. It's just the behavior of this beast I do not like. Taking advantage of the pause between Cero's release, he appeared in front of Shubai with a ringing sound. Bai's right hand pressed directly on Shubai's hideous bone mask, and the terrifying power even made it unable to condense Ryatsu. Shendu picked it up with one hand. The muscles on his right arm were knotted and swollen, and his unparalleled strength exploded instantly. Shubai's streamlined body was like a shooting star, instantly rushing into the flame layer in the sky. Shendu's figure also disappeared in place, and when it reappeared, it was already close to Shubai's side. Although there are many ways of long-distance combat, he seems to prefer the pleasure of tearing flesh and blood. Before Shubai recovered from the flame cloud, a figure appeared beside him. There was a bright light on the slender blade, and it slashed down towards his abdomen. Scoff! The sound of flesh and blood being torn apart echoed in the sky, accompanied by the sizzling sound of the flames, like a symphony played to its peak. The majestic force immediately caused Su-Bai to fall from the flame cloud and hit the white sand hard. Boom! The flying white sand set off sand waves tens of meters high, and the ground sank deeply, burying everything in it. But it didn't last long. The substantive Ryatsu, which is visible to the naked eye, erupts from it and scatters all the dust away. A blank figure emerged from it, spreading from the shoulder blades to the waist and abdomen. The black armor was sliced open by Shendu, revealing the white substance of the great emperor. Like a living thing, it twisted ferociously. Numerous tiny granulation sprouts were produced, and they were patched together at a speed visible to the naked eye. The pain made Shubai's anger even wilder, like a flame, burning everything except instinct. He has only one purpose now, and that is to tear up the guy in front of him, and then eat shrimp bit by bit. The gap is getting bigger and bigger. Shendu frowned slightly, dissatisfied. What exactly did Aizen do to this guy? Isn't this purely smearing Vasto Lord's face? As Vasto Lord, Shendu is very proud to have such a fellow. Kill it. Shubai exploded at an astonishing speed, and when he stretched out his hand, there were bursts of explosive sounds, and he approached Shendu in an instant. The blades of the two arms are like praying mantises, pinching down Shendu's neck. The tearing air, the sound of piercing the air, shook the god's eardrum. Boom! Shendu separated his hands, and just in time nestled the cold blade in his palm. Maybe it has some research value. His blood-red eyes stared at the white golden pupils, and he could not see any emotional fluctuations in them, as if they were mechanical creations. But Sailaporo's other research tasks haven't been done yet. What's more, there are new targets emerging. So please die. Click. As Shendu's voice fell, a majestic, terrifying force burst out from his arm. Under this force, those two bladed arms of Shubai were crushed abruptly, revealing pale bone stubble, mixed with white flesh and blood. Roar! A deafening scream rang in Shendu's ears. In the face of the impact of sound waves visible to the naked eye, the eardrums without steelskin protection unexpectedly leaked strands of bright red. However, in just a short while, Shendu recovered to his original state, but there was an unconcealable coldness on his originally calm face. This irrational beast does everything just to kill. Shendu casually threw out the broken flesh and blood in his hand, retracted his right hand, and put his 5 fingers together, like an indestructible spike. Pooh! The sound of flesh and blood being torn apart resounded in the pale chest cavity. Shendu's white palm pierced his chest and touched the beating heart. Boom! A dull sound came from his chest cavity. A deep dark red color continuously oozes out from the crack. I didn't expect you, who are all white, to have a red heart. Shendu was surprised, but he didn't hesitate at all when he struck and crushed the heart completely abruptly. Shubai was thrown directly from the sky, like tattered pieces. But in this case, he still didn't die. Aizen's transformation gave him super vitality. Even when it was still in the air, Shubai started the high-speed regeneration. As if mending, new white flesh and blood continued to grow to fill the gap, and even the heart recovered accordingly. First time feeling the trouble of high-speed regeneration, Shendu raised his right hand and aimed at Shubai, who was about to hit the ground. Golden and red lines were outlined in it. The high temperature was spreading, and the moisture in the surrounding air evaporated instantly. Then if you beat it to ashes, shouldn't it be regenerated? The burning smell in the air became more and more intense. Immeasurable blazing flames converged on the flame cloud, and a large number of spiritual particles instantly condensed on his palm. The berserk Cero erupted in Shendu's palm. The substantive magma coiled around it like a fire snake, and the crimson Ryatsu was highly compressed, burning everything in front of its Tsubai, who fell down, was unwilling to die just like that. Immediately, a Cero red ball was condensed in front of the horns on the top of the head, and all the spirits were integrated into it, and the substantive Ryatsu gathered in front of the horns like a river rushing. Boom! In comparison, the blank Cero seems to be a bit faster. At the moment when the red beam of light distorted the space, the Berserk Cero also followed the trend and instantly wiped out the pale Cero with a destructive attitude. And the remaining prestige remains undiminished, and it goes straight to the bottom and swallows it. Wherever it reaches, everything turns into nothingness. The temperature in the forest of Minos Grande also rose accordingly, as if it had entered a scorching summer day, and the surrounding air was also full of dullness. Boom! The Berserk Cero directly engulfed the blank body completely, destroying all structures, even through the interlaced golden and red rays of light. Subai's gradually decomposed body can be seen. The black armor was like paper, falling apart in just an instant. Immediately after, that was the white flesh and blood, as well as the pale bones. The surging dust covered the sky and the moon, and even briefly suppressed the light of the flame clouds in the sky. When Cero subsided, a dilapidated body lay flat in the molten pit, and the surrounding area was scorched black. The pale head and body are only connected by a little flesh skin. The spine is directly fused 3.2, and only the burnt to charred flesh remains on the abdominal cavity. Although his high-speed regeneration is still promoting the recovery of his body, the efficiency has been greatly reduced compared to before. Shendu fell from the air and walked to Subai's side, frowning slightly. The tenacious vitality is not like Minos Grande. Strictly speaking, Subai's strength is not as good as Stark's, or even Holy Bell and Ulquior's. But the tenacious vitality and the ability of high-speed regeneration it showed completely crushed them. Find the answer from his soul. Shendu's palm was pressed on the top of his head, and he entered the void of death, unable to stop the power of extracting the soul. But for a moment, its transparent soul was directly pulled out. It is very different from other Minos Grande souls. There are traces of stitching everywhere on the blank soul, as if countless souls have been blended together. It's a bit similar to the Devil's Method. Shendu recalled the records in the Demon Magic, which contained methods such as soul replacement, stitching, and blending. Take a sip. It's vasto lord after all. Subai's soul was melted into a ball by it, condensed to the size of a capsule, and swallowed directly. At the moment of digesting Subai's soul, Shendu's Ryatsu immediately dissipated, causing the already collapsed sand surface to sink several meters again. His soul is filling and strengthening, as well as the corners of Shendu's mouth suddenly raised slightly, and an inexplicable smile appeared on his calm and indifferent face. I see. Is this your plan? Aizen Suk. Chapter 82 Your Glory is over. Hueco Mundo will be taken over by me. 12 steps toward the ultimate have been completed. Template progress. 65%, 75%. Unlock the dog charm. Current abilities. Dragon body, fire magic energy, demon magic, dragon charm, pig charm, horse charm, mouse charm, dog charm. Ryatsu. Super Lingwei, to be evolved. After swallowing the empty soul, Shendu's soul power also increased and enriched, and new spells were unlocked. Dog charm, immortality, is a perfect match with the horse charm. And the unlocking of this talisman also means that all the 12 talismans can be unlocked only by the last talisman. However, Shendu did not intend to explore the dog's spell ability at this time. After devouring Subai's soul, he discovered a very interesting thing. Aizen adds fuel to the empty soul, which is enough to affect a certain creation of the essence of the soul. If Yoshu devours Subai's soul, the stability of his soul will be greatly reduced, and there is a possibility of collapse at any time. The evolution of Minos Grande often involves the soul level, especially Vasto Lord. In this way, it is very obvious. Aizen hopes that by controlling Shendu's soul, he can control the entire Hueco Mundo. The abacus is good. Shendu is exercising his body, which had recovered to its peak. It's a pity, after all, it was a bit short. It's just that close. Whether it is a sheep charm or a horse charm, they have absolute control in this aspect. The sheep charm is the power of the soul, which can be used to heal the means of splitting and pulling away, etc. on the soul. The horse charm can get rid of all external forces in the body, and naturally includes such creations that affect the soul. If Aizen started attacking Shendu before he unlocked these two spells, then it would be really hard to guard against. Fortunately, he has always been cautious. To put it simply, that is enough rounds. Really, revenge for kindness. Shendu recalled the great gift he gave Aizen, but Aizen retaliated for his vainness. Suddenly 17 in my heart is extremely unhappy. You have to make this guy pay the price. When Shendu said this, he didn't think of the fact that he himself appeared in this world without warning and beat Aizen up. In his view, Void appears to wreak havoc in Hueco Mundo, and within its soul lies a destabilizing creation. This behavior is undoubtedly a provocation. Immediately, powerful probing nerves unfolded immediately, and the endless Ryatsu seemed to burst out from Shindu's body like a tidal wave. It's just a split second. Its perception range is expanded to ultimate, touching the periphery of Hueco Mundo. There was a flash of crimson light in Shindu's eyes, which was abnormally bright. Found it ring to turn. The white sand flows, leaving a pair of footprints. This guy. Sui Feng poked his head out of Nilu's arms, trying to look in the direction where Shendu disappeared. Are there any new enemies? Nilu shook her head, puzzled, and said, Your Majesty's range of detection or perception is much stronger than ours. He can find it, but it doesn't mean we can find it. Obviously, Nilu has a very clear understanding of the gap between them. Hueco Mundo perimeter. After sensing the complete disappearance of the blank Ryatsu, Ikamaru Jin understood that this guy was probably killed by Shendu. As for whether it was swallowed by Shendu, he is not quite sure. To investigate the specific situation or something, Ikamaru Jin does not have the courage to face Shendu. The plan that Aizen told him has been completed. For the rest, just let it happen. After all, he is not working for Aizen wholeheartedly. Hey, but the original thing will develop towards the ideal side. Ikamaru Jin pulled out shins and tapped the hilt on the empty space in front of his body. With Ryatsu's touch, a simple door quietly opened in front of him. It's time to go back and report on the mission. This time when I came to Hueco Mundo, I actually encountered Urahara Kisuke and Hirako Shinji. It's a surprise. Just when he was about to step into the world-transmitting gate, his body froze in place suddenly, and his right hand on the knife dart suddenly grasped the handle of the knife, and Ryatsu surged all over his body. Obviously, a big gift has been given to Aizen. Shindu's voice came from behind. But this guy, why does he covet my Hueco Mundo? Cold sweat oozed from the pores on Ikamaru Jin's forehead and slid down the bridge of his nose until it landed on his collar. Originally, if there is no problem with Shubai, Shendu continued on his own. Maybe I will let you return to the Soul Society safe and sound and report to Aizen on the details of this operation. But why? His tone seemed a little indifferent, and his feelings gradually became shallow. Do you want to add that unstable substance to the empty soul base? Before he finished speaking, he saw a silvery white light cut through the sky, tear the air, and went straight to Shindu's heart with swift force. Clang! Shindu raised his hand and directly bounced away the flying shins with a knife, and an inestimable golden light beam shot out from his eyes, which instantly collapsed the world-transmitting gate in front of Ikamaru Jin. Now that you're here, don't leave. I am reluctant to use Shihuin Yuruchi and Suifeng for research, but I am not willing to use your Ikamaru Jin. Don't forget, you are Shinigami, and I am Minos Grande. Sometimes, Shindu thinks his temper is too kind, so that some people seem to be quite unscrupulous when they act. Ikamaru Jin's forehead kept dripping with cold sweat. Shindu broke his Zampakit shins with his bare hands in the present world, which really left him with a lot of psychological shadow, so that when he faced Shindu, his state inevitably declined. Your Majesty Shindu, these matters have nothing to do with me. Ikamaru Jin still maintains that fox-like smirk. I'm only responsible for recording the data about the blank. Everything else is being done by Captain Aizen. If one ignores the cold sweat on his forehead, the credibility of this explanation is quite high. It doesn't matter. The blade in Shindu's hand suddenly ignited a raging fire, and the scorching heat even distorted the nearby space. I just needed an outlet for my anger. It doesn't matter if you or Aizen. Whoever is in front of you. Let's vent on whoever is. He raised the blade and slashed straight down. The flame wrapped around the sword and instantly cut everything in front of him. He drew a deep ravine on the sand and went straight to Ikamaru Jin. Facing an enemy of Shendu's level, Ikamaru Jin dared not be careless. When even Zanpakuto Shins was liberated again, the silver-white light flashed above the zenith and instantly met the pressure of the flaming sword. The strong sense of oppression made it difficult for him to resist, but he still shattered this sword pressure with an instant burst of Ryatsu. However, Ikamaru Jin was not at all relaxed. On the contrary, his expression was dignified. If this flaming sword pressure was just done by Shendu casually, then the strength gap between him and Shendu would widen to an insurmountable chasm. Without hesitation, Ikamaru Jin immediately broke out with his strongest strength. Bankai. He directly raised the Shin's Zanpakuto in his hand, put one hand on the blade. The tip of the knife was facing Shindu's heart, and a violent, materialized blue Ryatsu surged on his body. I saw the corner of Ikamaru Jin's mouth slightly raised, and a faint voice came out. Kamishini no Yari. Before the words fell, the world was filled with the sound of a clear knife, and a bright knife light erupted in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the scorching light of the blade burst out from the palm of his hand, passing across the desert in an instant. Everything around was cut open by the light of the blade. White sand, strong wind, and even shivering animals hidden underground. The way the blade advances, everything will be cut off. Ikamaru Jin, who went all out, is still quite impressive. The power it erupts is not weaker than any Espada. And Shendu seemed to be shocked by Ikamaru Jin's Bankai, and couldn't react for a while. The silver-white blade that pierced the sky pierced through his heart in an instant, and spread a distance of 100 meters towards the rear. There's a gully in front of you and a canyon behind you. Kamishini no Yari is only the aftermath, which cuts and destroys everything. There was a bit of astonishment in Shendu's blood-red eyes, as if it was hard to believe what happened before him. From the pierced chest, there was a spring of fresh blood spurting out, which stained the sand surface while staining the blade red. The scorching high temperature even made the white sand burnt black until it melted. At this moment, the wind seems to have stopped. Everything around has been pressed the pause button. Although I once failed in front of His Majesty Shendu, and I was once in a state of embarrassment like a defeated dog, Ikamaru Jin maintained the posture of holding Zanpakuto, but the originally slender shins had shrunk to the appearance of a short sword. But His Majesty Shendu, don't take any Shinigami captain lightly. Shendu's eyes dropped. Looking at the chest, there was nothing at the heart. The blood flowed smoothly, as if there was no end to it. That's it, Your Majesty Shendu. Ikamaru Jin put the shins in front of him again, and said in an icy tone, "This is the end of your glory. I'll take your Hueco Mundo." While speaking, Ikamaru Jin's expression froze suddenly. Shendu replied with an apologetic smile, and said slowly, "I'm really sorry. At first I thought about continuing to suppress this high-speed regeneration, but it was too strenuous. One lost control and accidentally recovered." Ikamaru Jin stared at his heart. The blood on the huge gap suddenly stopped, and countless granulations sprouted to fill the gap. "Look, it's like this." Shendu loosened the grip on high-speed regeneration's Ryatsu, who was still in the comprehension range to recover the speed, suddenly lost control. But in an instant, the huge gap was directly filled perfectly and restored to its original state. It's like a miracle. Ikamaru Jin's slightly squinted eyes suddenly widened, and his azure blue pupils shrank to the size of a pinprick. This level of high-speed regeneration is already beyond his cognition. Even the former Shubai, the kind of monster that can recover even a broken heart, looks weak in front of Shendu. The high-speed regeneration of the two is not at the same level at all. Ikamaru Jin even suspected that if Shendu's head was cut off, a new one would grow back. Although I'd love to hear about your so-called plan with Aizen. There is a trace of helplessness in Shendu's expression, but the facts tell me that the pressure to do this is too outrageous. It may be possible to curb its own high-speed regeneration. But once the external force of the horse charm is added, it becomes very difficult. Really, Ikamaru Jin raised the short sword in his hand again, pointing the blade at Shendu, and the deep blue Ryatsu surged with it. I still underestimate the king of Hueco Mundo. Can unify the existence of Hueco Mundo? How can it be easily killed by this level of attack? Shendu grinned and smiled, as if 000 was chatting with an old friend, and the acquaintance was natural. I don't mind if you show more strength. I am very much looking forward to it. Ikamaru Jin nodded slightly, returning to a calm posture. It seemed that the previous panic was all faked by him. No steps. Just as the two were chatting and exchanging, he opened his mouth slightly and said in a faint voice. The next moment, the silver-white Guanglian instantly broke through the barrier of space and went straight to Shindu's head in a silent gesture. Since destroying the heart can't kill you, then crush your head. The killing intent spread and expanded like light training, permeating the entire battlefield. The remaining white sand in the gully even trembled because of it, as if in fear. However, for this attack, Shendu seemed to have a gap. Before Guanglian broke out, he leaned slightly to the left, just in time to avoid the lasing blade. But how could Ikamaru Jin's attack be so simple? Ryatsu surged on the blade, bursting with strength towards Shindu's defenseless neck. The azure blue Ryatsu seemed to have encountered a transparent and hidden barrier and was forcibly isolated from it. Shindu maintained a slightly tilted posture, and a pure blue light suddenly flashed in his blood-red eyes, making him extremely eye-catching. Ikamaru Jin only felt an extremely powerful force coming from the shins, which almost made him unable to hold it. The elongated shins retracted in an instant, returning to the short sword posture. He looked at Shindu suspiciously. Obviously, even Ryatsu didn't explode, but why did there appear strange power? I call this ability mindfulness. Shindu seemed to see Ikamaru Jin's doubts and explained with a smile. The reading power of the chicken charm is one of the things he uses less. But when he saw the battle between Urahara Kisuke and Hirako Shinji and Tsubai, he suddenly discovered the real use of the chicken spell ability. That is defense. A defense similar to Bakud's splitting void number 81. Shindu does not lack the means of frontal attack, but the defense is slightly lacking. The development of the chicken spell ability just makes up for this shortcoming. Shock appeared in Ikamaru Jin's eyes, but soon he recovered, and a fox-like smirk reappeared at the corner of his mouth. He looked at Shindu, with the tip of the shin's knife pointing straight ahead. Originally, this ability was reserved for someone. Since His Majesty Shendu refuses to let me go, I can only let you try it first. Shoot him. Shins Chapter 83, there is a saying that one force breaks all laws the moment Ikamaru Jin's voice fell. Shendu clearly felt that a new force suddenly burst out from his newly grown heart. The powerful dissolving power instantly dissolved his cells and even spread over his entire body. I never told anyone. Ikamaru Jin smiled slightly, like a snake that had successfully hunted. The true power of Shin's Bankai. Even Aizen, this is a secret that only I know. The moment Shins expands and contracts, it turns into dust and then releases poison enough to dissolve cells inside the blade. Those deep blue eyes stared at Shindu's eyes and said seriously, as early as when I pierced His Majesty Shindu's heart with Kamishini no Yari, I have already left this part of the poison in your body. After all, some Arankar high-speed regeneration is pretty outrageous. As a frequent participant in experiments with Aizen, Ikamaru Jin has seen many Jillian and Ajuchas with outrageous abilities. There are not a few Minos Grandes who can survive even if their heads are cut off. The only pity is that the more outrageous the Minos Grande's ability, the combat effectiveness will be correspondingly weakened. But Shendu, as the king of Hueco Mundo, the strongest existence in Hueco Mundo, and the only existence of Arankar that is completely independent, Ikamaru Jin had to take the worst case into consideration. That is, Shendu is very likely to be a monster with high-speed regeneration and full strength. As it turned out, he was right. Even if the heart is completely penetrated, it can still grow out. Such a level of high-speed regeneration is quite rare, even for Ikamaru Jin. Shindu didn't speak, but closed his eyes slightly, feeling the process of the cells being dissolved. After having the dog charm, he has full capital of waves. Shindu had already sensed that Shin's blade fragment was left near his heart. The horse charm can drive away all external forces. Naturally, Bankai also includes Shin's. Shindu is just curious about how strong the ability of Aizen, who almost killed and fused with Jayaku, is. It turns out, Ikamaru Jin's Shin's Bankai, the intensity is absolutely amazing. The defense and self-healing level of his dragon body alone are not enough to resist this poison that can dissolve cells. Dissolution continues. Starting from the heart, it's spread to the entire chest and even the waist and abdomen in just one breath. Due to the large-scale collapse, only a small part of Shindu's head and body were connected together, which looked very terrifying and weird. This time it's really over. Ikamaru Jin stared at Shindu's gradually disappearing body and heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. In the face of this kind of monster-level existence, the only way to fight an intelligence agent is to defeat him at an extremely fast speed without the other party knowing him. Only in this way can we escape from such a desperate situation. The moment Ikamaru Jin relaxed, the original horror on Shindu's face suddenly stopped, replaced by an extremely dangerous smile. Finished? I do not think so. As his voice fell, something that shocked Ikamaru Jin to the extreme happened. Shindu opened his arms wide, showing the dilapidated body to Ikamaru Jin. The original dissolution progress stopped abruptly, and countless granulations sprouted crazily in the gap. But in an instant, the body was opened and restored to its original appearance. Even the white robe was restored. An advanced product researched by Sailaporo, it can be restored through the perfusion of Ryatsu, similar to the Dead Bull outfit. Shindu, intact as before, just stood in front of Ikamaru Jin. His pupils shrank to the size of a pinprick, and he couldn't believe his eyes. This kind of poison that can dissolve even cells can't destroy God. After Ikamaru Jin mastered Bankai, he also tried its power in a hidden place, and the effect was considerable. This also gave him enough confidence to directly hide Bankai's original ability as the biggest hole card for a comeback. But now, he no longer squinted his eyes as usual, but stared at Shindu with deep blue eyes. "It's just the beginning," Shindu said calmly. "I've seen your methods before. It's the so-called courteous reciprocity. You should also be curious about my abilities." The space around it suddenly emitted a slight tremor sound, not even as strong as the sound of the wind in the air. However, Shindu's figure has already disappeared in place. Ikamaru Jin looked at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him in horror, and wanted to refute that he was not curious at all. However, Shindu's whip kicked straight towards his side and waist. Caught off guard, Ikamaru Jin crossed his hands across his body, accepting the attack of this terrifying force. Boom! Shindu didn't show mercy at all. This whip kick almost exploded with his strongest strength under normal conditions. For a moment, Ikamaru Jin only felt as if he was hit by a flying mountain. Even if Ryatsu condensed, he still heard the sound of broken arms coming from above his arms. The next moment, the whole person is like a shooting star, streaking across the sky. Ikamaru Jin flew 1,000 meters away and landed heavily on the sand, sinking into several huge pits immediately, and was in extreme embarrassment. Before he could stand upright and recover, Shindu's Ryatsu appeared beside him again. "Silver, do you know?" Shindu narrated indifferently, as if talking to an old friend. "Sometimes pure strength and speed are often better than those weird abilities. I prefer one sentence. One force breaks all laws." In a hurry, Ikamaru Jin reluctantly raised his Zampakit in his hand and pushed it forward. The silver light pierced directly towards Shindu's brow again. "If the heart doesn't work, try the head. I don't believe you can survive with your head pierced." However, Shindu seemed to have expected it a long time ago. Just turning his head slightly, the silver-white light flew past his ears. To be honest, this level of attack, Shendu seemed to be saying something insignificant. Even if I stand in front of you, I can easily dodge. I'm just curious about Kamishini no Yari's abilities. That's all. Chapter 84. If Yoruchi can't stand it, sway phone. You are responsible for making it up. Ikamaru Jin was almost desperate. The hidden hole cards are like nothing in front of Shendu. His previous battles were just Shendu playing with himself. Such a big gap directly made Ikamaru Jin completely unable to resist the slightest thought. Now you still have a certain value. The corners of Shindu's mouth raised slightly, like a devil. I won't kill you so easily. But a little lesson, definitely not less. After the words fell, Ikamaru Jin only saw a fist continuously magnified in front of him. He didn't even have time to dodge, but he felt a huge force coming from his chest, accompanied by the crisp sound of bones breaking. Ikamaru Jin turned into a shooting star again and disappeared from sight. But this time, Shendu didn't wait for him to land safely, but started the ring and chased after him instantly. For a moment, this person who was considered elegant, even among the captains, directly turned into a ball in Shendu's hands, hitting it back and forth without any dignity at all, until he was dying and on the verge of death. Shendu just stopped. He picked up Ikamaru Jin's deadly outfit with one hand. Just 9-10 here. I will imprison you in the prison of Shuya Palace for a while. When the time comes, Sailaporo will conduct research on you, and you'll be his second captain's test subject. The first captain test subject is naturally Kuratsuchi Mayuri. As a mad scientist, he does not lack dedication. He even took the initiative to ask himself to be a test product in the two-person experiment. But no matter Shihoin Yoruchi or Sway Phone, Shendu has no intention of letting Sailaporo study. These two belong to him alone. How could someone else be in control? Of course, this is definitely not the last one. Shendu believes that in the days to come, the Soul Society will continue to send him various experimental products. Even those at the captain level are very likely. Ikamaru Jin didn't have the strength to refute Shendu. After being beaten up, he didn't even have the strength to open his eyes. Through this battle, he deeply realized the gap between himself and Shendu. Not a class at all. It is impossible to take down an opponent of this level without a few captains, BHBH, besieging them together. And the difficulty of killing him is even more outrageous than cracking Kaika Suigetsu. Forget it. Let's mess it up. Ikamaru Jin endured the severe pain from various parts of his body, feeling that at least dozens of bones had been broken, and it was already a miracle that he survived. As for Aizen's plans, let him die. Now I'm already a waste. He let Shendu carry him and rushed towards the forest of Minos Grande. Here, Ikamaru Jin even saw an acquaintance. No, it should be a familiar cat. Hello, good long time no see, Yoruchi-san. Because of the reason to say hello bravely, Ikamaru Jin touched the wound so that the facial muscles twitched and he didn't pass out. Although they are not the captains of the same group, they have investigated information about Urahara Kisuk and others. Ikamaru Jin still knows the black cat form of Shihoin Yoruchi. I just don't know what happened to the white cat in the empty arms of the female queen. That disgusted look, I always feel like I've seen it somewhere before. Don't say hello in that tone. Yoruchi said disdainfully. It seems like we know each other very well. If it wasn't for you and Aizen, I wouldn't be in this situation. Before she finished speaking, Shendu threw Ikamaru Jin to the ground and directly reached out to embrace the black cat Yoruchi standing on Nilu's shoulder. Did you feel wronged by such a field? Shendu rubbed the cat's head vigorously, not paying attention to Shihoin Yoruchi's angry eyes. You don't need to rest tonight. In a word, the black cat Yoruchi's body stiffened directly, and even the cat's hair that exploded gradually retracted. Sway Fong even saw a trace of unspeakable embarrassment in the golden vertical pupils of his own Lord Yoruchi. Damn villain. What do you want to do to Yoruchi-sama? She let out an angry roar and directly exploded the fur in Nilu's arms. Master Yoruchi? Ikamaru Jin lay on the ground regardless of his image, raised his eyelids and glanced at the white cat, as if he remembered something. It turns out that Captain Suifeng was also captured by His Majesty Shendu. He said to himself, rather lightly, "Then I won't be the first Shinigami captain to be captured. It's okay, not too embarrassing." Suifeng didn't talk to him at all, but continued to stare at Shendu with angry eyes. So that Shendu glanced at her casually and said bluntly, "If that's the case, then you can go and observe together. If Yoruchi can't stand it, you will replace Yoruchi." As soon as he finished speaking, Nilu was excited and jumping for joy. "Your Majesty, what about me? Can I go too?" Apparently, Nilu, who is innocent, kind, and ignorant of the world, doesn't know the meaning of Shendu's words at all. It was Suifeng, who was used to the dirty side of soul society, who was able to hear the meaning behind his words. "If you want to come, it's not impossible." Shendu thinks that with the blessing of the dragon body and the infinite recovery of the horse charm, the three of them should be no problem. This is self-confidence that comes from strength. The anger on Suifeng's cat face became more and more intense, as if it was about to turn into a materialized flame and burn. But under Nilu's suppression, even if she burst out with all her strength, it was still not enough to break free. After being turned into Minos Grande, Suifeng is nothing more than an Ajuchas. It's still the Ajuchas without Arankar. And the Vasto Lord female queen Su Nilu after Arankar is not at the same level. But in terms of strength, it was directly and completely crushed. In that case, it's such a happy decision. Shendu clapped her hands and praised. It's just a day off for Hurley Bell. She has worked hard enough these days. But even at this time, Suifeng still stared at Shendu with angry eyes unrelentingly. If the eyes were lethal, Shendu might have been burnt to death. Shendu didn't care about this, and directly hugged the black cat Yoruchi, who had completely given up resistance, walked up to Ikamaru Jin, and picked it up with one hand. "Let's go. It's time to return to Shuya Palace." As for Urahara Keisuke and his group, let them go back and summarize the information. After having the dog charm, Shendu's words are full of confidence. If the information is too lacking, then the future drama will be too boring. Chapter 85, the huge difference between Yoruchi Suifeng and Nilu's physical fitness Void Knight Palace. Exclusively in Shendu's palace. Black-skinned Yoruchi lay across Shendu's waist and abdomen, breathing lightly without any defense. Judging from its appearance, it seems to be very tired. Because of the characteristics of cats and being the captain of the former second team, its vigilance is still quite high. Even when sleeping, she won't be as defenseless as she is now. Not to mention, Suifeng was still by her side, humming slightly and frowning from time to time, as if recalling some painful memories. Only Nilu is different. As Minos Grande, she far exceeds Yoruchi and Suifeng in terms of physique. She clasped Shendu's arm tightly with both hands. Nilu was like a little beast that was attached to its master, gently rubbing her face against its skin. "Your Majesty, can I still come here tomorrow night?" When she said this, Nilu stared at Shendu pleadingly with her watery eyes. To be honest, Shendu was a little hesitant. After all, he's committed to Hurley Bell. Although missing an appointment is nothing to him, but if he can't do it, he always feels a little awkward. After all, both Hurley Bell and Nilu surrendered to him wholeheartedly. If someone else is okay, he will never take it to heart. Shendu is still unable to do this kind of behavior of deceiving his own people for the time being. Well, Shendu pondered, when the time comes, you can call Hurley Bell first. With Hurley Bell's character, she will never reject Nilu at will. Under the premise that she couldn't think of a suitable reason, she could only obediently come here with Nilu. Well, what a genius decision. As if thinking of some developments of tomorrow, Shendu involuntarily changed so that Yoruchi, who was sleeping soundly on his waist, suddenly felt something hard fixed on him. So much so that she unconsciously waved her hand to refuse and muttered in a low voice, "Too tired. Ahem." Shendu coughed twice to hide his embarrassment. Compared with Nilu and the others, no matter Yoruchi or Suifeng, their endurance is much worse. Yoruchi rolled his eyes, occasionally returning to his senses. Suifeng seemed to have passed out completely. No matter how loud the movement was, it was difficult to wake her up. Let them have a good rest today, and don't disturb them for the time being. Shendu took Nilu, who was in good spirits, and left the palace directly after putting on the white robe. And shortly after they left, Yoruchi also gradually woke up from a deep sleep and the first thing that rushed into his nasal cavity was the weird and exciting smell. Even with Yoruichi's carefree character, he couldn't help but blush. Everything that happened before also involuntarily appeared in my mind, like a movie replayed over and over again. Really are. She shook her head again and again, temporarily expelling these memories. Suifeng also woke up at the right time, meeting Yoruichi's eyes just in time. After the two were stunned for a moment, they turned their heads at the same time to hide the embarrassment in their hearts. After all, sometimes the change of identity is difficult to accept for a while. Master Yoruichi, after a long silence, it was Suifeng who broke the silence. She looked at Yoruichi cautiously. We're back to where we were now. The villain Shendu is not here, shall we? When mentioning Shendu's name, Suifeng couldn't help gnashing his teeth. Hearing this, Yoruichi was taken aback, then relaxed, leaning on Shendu's usual position. Suifeng, do you think that with Shendu's strength, who in the Soul Society can fight him head-on and win? This question made Suifeng hesitate. As the captain of the second team who has just taken office, although she has been exposed to many secrets of the Soul Society. However, little is known about the strength of the captains. Veteran captains like Chunshui, Jushiro, Unohana. She is completely unaware of their details. The only ones who are better than Shu are her fellow team, Captain Byakuya Kachiki, and the Japanese team, Captain Cat Village Sajin. Originally, she thought she knew the strength of Aizen Suk, captain of the 5th Division. But since being captured by Shendu, Yoruichi has roughly explained the process of Captain Hollow back then. This also made Aizen revealed in Suifeng's impression, making it no longer clear. In addition, there is Ikamaru Jin, who was just captured and thrown to Sailaporo for experimental research. Maybe a captain with more senior qualifications can do it. Suifeng hesitated, such as Kairaku, Shunsui, Shur Yukitake, Unohana Retsu, and Captain Yamamoto Jinryasai, Shigakuni. Yoruichi nodded and folded his arms. Cero was out of the picture. Anyway, she and Suifeng were the only two in the room. Shendu's palace is a forbidden zone in the Shuya Palace. Except for the female Minos Grande, others are not allowed to approach. Then let me tell you a more accurate answer. First of all, Jushiro has been weak and sick all year round, and he is simply not strong enough to support 2 high-intensity battles. If that Kairaka guy spreads out Bankai, he might be able to barely wrestle with Shendu. As for Unohana, when mentioning Unohana Retsu, Yoruichi hesitated. As first-generation Kenpachi, she must have the power to fight. Apparently, she is not clear about Unohana Retsu's true strength. Yoruichi's time as captain is not too short. Plus, she is the head of the 20th second generation of the Shihoin family, so it is normal to know a little more secrets. First-generation Kenpachi. Suifeng once again learned a new secret information from Yoruichi. Perhaps the only thing that can be determined is the Captain Yamamoto Motoyanaji, Shigakuni. Yoruichi affirmed, for his strength, you just need to know that the reason why he was able to serve as the captain for thousands of years is because the Soul Society has never had a stronger Shinigami than him. Suifeng nodded thoughtfully. Here comes the point. Yoruichi embraced Suifeng, pulled Suifeng forcefully in front of him, and said carelessly, "This guy is so scary. Do you think that with the level of the two of us, we can really escape from the Shuya Palace? Escape from this guy's clutches." Chapter 86, Ikamaru Jin. Why is the script different from what was agreed? Yoruichi's analysis instantly brought Suifeng back to reality. When she involuntarily recalled the horror of Shendu, her body shivered subconsciously. Although her strength ranks among the lowest among the many captains. But no matter what, it's also a captain-level Shinigami. But even with this kind of strength, in front of Shendu, it's just a one-shot kill. It was hard for her to imagine what a tragic situation it would be if a war broke out between Hueco Mundo and Soul Society one day. In what unknown direction will the fate of the Soul Society go? Stay safe here for now. Yoruichi's expression was also somewhat helpless. Actually, in the eyes of Shendu, there is not much difference between Shinigami and Minos Grande. Not only can he allow others to switch between the two species 763 at will, but he can also easily achieve it himself. Perhaps for Shendu, the only difference between Shinigami and Minos Grande is the slight difference in appearance. Suifeng didn't say anything when he heard this, but just wrapped his hands around Yoruchi's waist and exerted a little more force. After recovering her body, her personality will be the same again. It's just that the original arrogance was completely shattered by Shendu's behavior. At least, in front of Yoruchi, Suifeng can no longer be arrogant. White Tower Laboratory. This is the site exclusively for Sailaporo, and Shendu moved the White Tower in the forest of Minos Grande intact. Among them are not only the experimental data accumulated by Sailaporo over the years, but also spiritual equipment and spiritual weapons created by various inventions. In the follow-up, there will be high-end analytical instruments, Lingbo measuring instruments, etc. brought by Kuratsuchi Mayuri from Soul Society. It can be said, this is one of the most important places in the entire Shuya Palace, second only to Shindu's exclusive palace. Inside the White Tower, in the huge laboratory, there is a clean operating bed. Ikemeru Jin lay lovelessly on it, his blue eyes slightly opened, looking up at the ceiling as if he was thinking about the meaning of life. And Sailaporo stood beside him, and Yadi recorded a series of data just obtained. Through these data, he can make the Arancarization of Minos Grande reach 100%. Of course, this process still requires Shendu to lead the whole process. Ikemeru Jin's seemingly intact body has been dissected by Sailaporo. He was about to touch his head. Sailaporo would have tried it if he hadn't been sure. He gestured with the scalpel for a while, then shook his head in disappointment and sighed, "No, I can't do a non-destructive craniotomy." Sailaporo's expression was full of helplessness. If the brain is slightly damaged, such a high-quality experimental material may turn into a pool of rotten meat. I can only turn to His Majesty for help. His calm tone seemed to be stating a very ordinary thing. But Ikemeru Jin, who was lying on the operating table, was sweating continuously from his forehead. He has dealt with Sailaporo before. When Aizen helped Arankar, he stood not far away. However, no matter how much Ikemeru Jin thinks about it, he can't imagine that the protagonist of the year will be changed today. Fortunately, this guy is not sure. Otherwise, if his head was cut open, he might die tragically on this operating table. Ikemeru Jin doesn't think he can have Shendu's pervert resilience. Just when Sailaporo was in trouble, a group of 3 walked into the White Tower. His Majesty. At this moment, Sailaporo has no resentment at all. It was much more comfortable playing under Shendu than under Aizen or Berrigan. Although the construction of the Shuya Palace is a bit labor-intensive, but he can participate in various researches, and there are various high-quality living materials for him to dissect. It can only be said that this is completely the most ideal life in his mind. The unhappiness of the past had long been stuffed into the bottle by him and destroyed together. The current Sailaporo is definitely one of the most loyal Arankars in Espada. At this moment, Shendu, who was walking towards him, had a strange expression on his face. Behind him, Holy Bell followed closely with an angry face, while Nilu put on a flattering smile and kept begging to his left and right. Although the voice is slightly quieter, Sailaporo can still hear words such as "just this time, Sister Hurley Bell," even if she didn't understand what Nilu was begging for. But Sailaporo tactfully ignored the two of them, and instead focused entirely on Shendu. Nilu and Hurley Bell belonged exclusively to His Majesty Shendu, and no matter what they discussed, it had nothing to do with him. The dissection progress of Ikemeru Jin has been basically completed. Sailaporo explained in plain language as much as possible. Through the experimental data obtained from him, it is absolutely possible to improve the previous Arancarization experiment so as to increase the success rate to 100%. Secondly, I think this guy's head also has a very high research value. Sailaporo's expression was extremely serious, and he didn't mean to be joking at all. If Your Majesty is willing to assist, I should be able to complete a non-destructive craniotomy. Hearing this, Shendu pondered for a moment, and under the horrified gaze of Ikemeru Jin, He directly nodded and agreed. Okay, let's do it. With me here, Ikamaru Jin won't damage even a single hair. Between the words, it seems to be full of self-confidence. Sailaporo suddenly looked excited, holding a scalpel and ready to start gesticulating on Ikamaru Jin's head. Wait! Ikamaru Jin stopped loudly. Your Majesty Shendu, I can provide information about Aizen at 3.7. Can you skip this autopsy? While talking, he even looked at the scalpel in Sailaporo's hand from time to time, which was enough to show the resistance in his heart. Unnecessary. Shendu resolutely rejected his proposal and signaled Sailaporo to hurry up. He didn't have much time to waste in this white tower. So, under Ikamaru Jin's almost desperate eyes, the scalpel was pressed against his forehead, accompanied by the smooth touch unfolding. A bloody scene was also presented in front of everyone. The weird thing is, not a single drop of blood spilled from it, and Ikamaru Jin saw a touch of pure blue gradually enlarged in Shendu's originally blood-red eyes. Chapter 87, Craniotomy. Ikamaru Jin's awakening the power of the chicken spell. The control of oozing blood with mind power can well replace some surgical procedures. In this regard, Sailaporo is not the slightest surprise. The experimental cooperation between him and Shendu has not happened once or twice. Sailaporo is even more apprehensive about Shendu's terrifying abilities. With the help of Shendu, he can fully display his talent in this area. This moment, Ikamaru Jin's perspective. Eccentric, quite eccentric. Even though he knew that his head had been cut open and even his brain was presented in front of everyone, not only did he feel no pain at all, but he also couldn't feel any sign of progress. On the contrary, Ikamaru Jin was so interested in the sudden blue light in Shendu's eyes that he subconsciously asked, "Your eyes?" Shendu smiled and explained, "A little obvious feature when the ability is applied. You can control your blood flow dynamics, as well as the stability of some flesh and blood." Hearing this, a pensive look appeared on Ikamaru Jin's face. He recalled the previous Shendu's ability to defend against his Ryatsu raid, known as the presence of mind power. From the looks of it, this ability really has countless usages, almost omnipotent. Not only can it be used in combat, but can also be used in daily life and even in experiments. The ability of this king of Hueco Mundo is really weird and unpredictable. A gelatinous substance indistinguishable from ordinary Shinigami. Sailaporo finally completed the in-depth anatomy, analyzing and commenting on the structure. Not even that Kuratsuchi Mayuri guy. Ikamaru Jin was surprised after hearing this. What Kuratsuchi Mayuri? Didn't His Majesty tell you? Sailaporo said to Cade without looking up. Kuratsuchi Mayuri is the first Shinigami captain we captured. He trespassed on the territory of the Minos Grande forest because he came to Hueco Mundo to look for living materials. Although he resisted with all his strength, he was still beaten up by His Majesty, and even the killing Jizo was crushed to a pulp. Shendu did not stop Sailaporo from speaking. With the loot already in his hands, it is impossible to talk about escaping from Hueco Mundo. What's more, Ikamaru Jin doesn't have the same heart with Aizen. He is a snake, a hunter lurking in the shadows. Even if he knew some secret information, Ikamaru Jin would never tell Aizen. Cero, so is that so? The astonishment in Ikamaru Jin's eyes was gradually replaced by enlightenment, and it was not difficult for him to figure out the key. If Kuratsuchi Mayuri was captured more than him, then all makes sense. At first, Ikamaru Jin thought that Sailaporo's first Shinigami Captain class test subject was Suefo. But it was discovered later that the treatment of female Shinigami Captains and male Shinigami Captains was not at the same level at all. Just because a certain virtual circle king has special hobbies. It wasn't until Sailaporo told the information about Kuratsuchi Mayuri just now that Ikamaru Jin understood how Shendu, the king of Hueco Mundo, quietly appeared in Soul Society. The 12th Division has been responsible for detecting the spiritual wave anomalies of the present world and the Soul Society. The abnormality of the Lingbo symbolizes whether there is an invasion of foreign enemies. The location of Ryatsu of Minos Grande and other illegal Shinigami, etc. But now the leaders of such important places are all from Hueco Mundo. This also detects a hammer. No wonder the entire 46 rooms were massacred. Almost forgot to ask you, Shendu suddenly said. About the murder of room 46, didn't Aizen say anything? Ikamaru Jin grinned and smirked like a fox. Of course there is. Shubai is not a perfect experiment. In order to return a suitable gift to His Majesty Shendu, Captain Aizen has not rested for more than a month. Obviously, Shubai is a gift from Aizen to Shendu in return. However, this gift is full of poison. It's really not friendly enough. Shendu was slightly dissatisfied. I support Aizen's cause so much, but he doesn't want to kill me all the time. It's really heartbreaking. The blue in his eyes flashed for a while, and Ikamaru Jin was terrified for fear that Shendu's careless operation would crush his brain into a pulp. During the moment when the two of them were talking nonsense, Sailaporo has completed all the data analysis, sorted out the conclusions, and started the transformation of the Aaroncarization plan. Your Majesty, this guy's head can be restored. Upon hearing this, Ikamaru Jin immediately regained his spirits and looked at Shendu excitedly. And Shendu just snapped his fingers lightly. The weird thing started. The magical force acted on Ikamaru Jin's head. The cut flesh and epidermis wriggled together bit by bit and re-sewed together in a tight way, without even leaving any scars. In just a few breaths, Ikamaru Jin recovered as before. Compared with the original, even the short light purple hair was not lost. The noble horse can drive away all external forces. The power of the horse charm can not only be used on oneself, but also on others. Certainly, it all depends on Shendu's wishes. Is this His Majesty's power? Ikamaru Jin, who has always been calm, was also shocked by the scene in front of him. Not only the head injury, but also the injury left by Shendu's previous battle. Everything was restored with ease. It's as simple as breathing. Good. Ikamaru Jin knew it very well. Not even the Cade of Unohana Retsu, the leader of the 4th Division, can reach this level. This can already be called a miracle. For the next period of time, in order to prevent accidents and stabilize the Shuya Palace 3, Shendu waved his hand, signaling Lumina and Bellona to come and escort Ikamaru Jin. For the time being, you will follow them to the prison for a while. Requirements such as 3 meals a day will also be taken care of by Sailaporo. He's not in the mood to attack Ikamaru Jin. Everyone is the same gender, so don't waste that time. After dealing with your foreign troubles, Shendu said indifferently, I'm going to the present world to collect a new batch of experimental materials. Since the Aaroncarization has been fully mastered, then the masking must also be mastered accordingly. Chapter 88. Thank you for your praise. I think so too when hearing this. Ikamaru Jin was stunned for a moment, then covered his face with his hands and let out a low laugh. But the laughter gradually magnified until it echoed in the empty laboratory, which seemed quite presumptuous. He has always been calm and has never shown his gaff in front of outsiders, even in front of Aizen. When Shendu saw this side of Ikamaru Jin, he also seemed a little surprised and puzzled. Only Sailaporo, who didn't understand the truth, showed a trace of dissatisfaction on his face. This is the White Tower Laboratory, which is his territory. The most taboo is this kind of unscrupulous lunatic, because this is completely contrary to the elegance he has always upheld. But seeing that Shendu had no objection to this, Sailaporo also stood aside very tactfully, without saying a word. During this period of time in Shuya Palace, he has fully understood the rules of respect and inferiority defined by Shendu, and strictly followed them. Sailaporo doesn't want to lose the good life of the moment because of a small mistake. In countless studies, he found that he was constantly evolving toward the perfect state. As for the notification of the broken wall, it has already been thrown into an unknown corner by 173 Sailaporo. This kind of thing is very harmful. How can the essence of the soul be divided? After receiving the teaching from Shendu, Sailaporo deeply recognized this point and abandoned the evolution plan of conception notification. This is one of the reasons why he respects Shendu so much now. Ikamaru Jin's laughter was still echoing until his voice became a little hoarse. It was a real surprise. He opened his eyes. His blue pupils looked directly at Shendu. Your Majesty, Shendu, your appearance completely broke the balance of this absolute world. I look forward to the future as it unfolds. After all, without waiting for Shendu's response, he followed Lumina and Bologna and walked towards the prison of Shuya Palace. Shendu looked at his retreating back, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Thank you for the compliment. I think so too. Present world. Karakura Town. Urahara Store. Underground training ground. A world-transmitting door slowly opened under the gaze of several eyes. Two figures escaped from it in embarrassment, not as unrestrained and comfortable as when they left. Hey, what happened? You two. This is too embarrassing. Where's Miss Yuruchi? Could it be that you two returned without success this time? Facing the questioning from their companions, neither Urahara Kisuke nor Hirako Shinji could give a standard answer immediately, until Saragaki Hayori, a grumpy guy, threw his slipper at Hirako Shinji's head. Snapped. A bright red blood mark appeared on Hirako Shinji's face. The pain made this guy, who had been doing nothing on weekdays, finally return to normal. It's just as painful as ever. Hirako Shinji covered his face and gasped. He raised his eyes and looked around, and the members of Vizard were looking at him with concern at this moment, as if they were asking what happened and the truth. Yeah, it's not too difficult. Seeing Urahara Kisuke, Hirako Shinji didn't mean to speak at all and could only explain instead. We entered a forest called Minos Grande in Hueco Mundo, and after slaughtering a few voids, we encountered a man-made Vasto Lord released by Aizen in a Hueco Mundo. Before he finished speaking, when he heard Vasto Lord, there were bursts of exclamations in the empty underground training ground. Aizen, Vasto Lord, or man-made. Everyone was shocked by this piece of information, but they didn't know that this was just the smallest incident. Hirako Shinji didn't beat BHFF them off, but waited for the group of guys to calm down before continuing, and then Kisuke and I got in a fight with that guy. At the critical moment, Kisuke took out the portable self-destruct skeleton to help us escape the blockade of that monster. Having said that, Urahara Kisuke couldn't help interrupting. Correct it. Compared to the guy in the back, that faux Vasto Lord is just a cutie. Hearing this, Hirako Shinji slapped himself weakly on the face and sighed. Indeed, my fault. Compared to him, this stout is really cute. Having said that, Saragaki Hayori couldn't help shivering, as if recalling some bad memories. After that, Hirako Shinji's eyes showed a rare hint of fear in the depths. A new battle broke out that Shendu has been hiding in the dark. And after Kisuke and I escaped, the battle between him and a Vasto Lord started immediately. A real monster has appeared, he murmured, as if talking to himself. The heart of that Vasto Lord was forcefully dug out, and the body was shattered. Not even a single bit of wreckage remained. The flame cloud at that time almost enveloped the entire Hueco Mundo. It seems that the whole world has fallen into the carnival of doomsday. Hirako Shinji's gestures and words finally silenced the members of Vizard. It is hard for them to imagine that the existence that was enough to easily destroy the cities of the world before can become stronger again. It's as if there is no upper limit. However, it's not over yet. Hirako Shinji paused before continuing. When Kisuke and I were about to open the portal to return to this world, Shindu's Ryatsu chased from the forest of Minos Grande to the outer edge of the virtual circle, even less than 100 miles away from us. At this time, a look of fear clearly appeared on his face. Hirako Shinji didn't think that he and Urahara Kisuke would be able to escape smoothly under the pursuit of Shendu. Even if you don't die in battle, it's still a semi-disabled situation. As early as the wave, when Shendu appeared in the world before, he had already placed him at the same level of combat power as Yamamoto Jinryuzai. If there are only 2 captain-level combat powers, they will definitely not be able to compete with them. Even Urahara Kisuke had prepared for the worst before coming. But his method can only support one person to escape. Hearing this, the expressions of the other members of Vizard were also hard to see ultimate. Fortunately, Hirako Shinji looked up. A smile finally formed on the corner of his mouth. That Shendu guy didn't come for us. He found Ikamaru Jin's Ryatsu on the outskirts of Hueco Mundo, Chapter 89. The treasure of the Holy Lord after discovering the battle between Shendu and Ikamaru Jin for the first time. Urahara Kisuke and Hirako Shinji didn't linger for long. After Ikamaru Jin unleashed his own Bankai, the two of them simply opened the portal and escaped from Hueco Mundo. Because Urahara Kisuke knows best, once Bankai is all out, it proves that Ikamaru Jin has no cards left. He could lose at any time. At that time, there will be no opponents to contain Shendu, and the two of them will not be able to escape. As for the outcome of the battle, there is no need to bother to think about it anymore. Among the current Hueco Mundo, there is no opponent who can fight Shendu head-on. After Hirako Shinji finished their story, there was an eerie silence in the empty training ground. No one spoke, not even the sound of breathing. Shindu's fierce record made them forget to breathe for a while, until boom, Muguruma Kensei punched the ground angrily, and suddenly a huge, deep pit appeared at his feet, almost causing Akutabo Shien, who was standing beside him, to fall down. "Idiot, what are you doing?" Saragaki Hiyori roared at his dissatisfaction. "Are you just leaving Yoruchi alone, not to be outdone?" Muguruma Kensei shouted. "Don't forget how we survived." As soon as these words came out, the field owner was even more silent. If it wasn't for Shiho and Yoruchi, everyone present would count as one, and all of them would be dealt with. Not even Urahara Kisuke can escape. There is no suitable solution for the time being. Urahara Kisuke finally spoke, breaking the silence. "I will study new infiltration tools. No one is allowed to enter the Hueco Mundo until it is invented." Muguruma Kensei immediately glared at him and retorted sharply. How could it be possible to continue waiting? Before he could finish his words, he was stared at by a pair of extremely cold eyes, as if he was in the cold winter. Urahara Kisuke made no secret of his Ryatsu, ultimate oppressive effect on everyone. In the current situation, anyone who enters the Hueco Mundo will end up with a tragic death. "I don't think you have the ability to perform miracles." After all, he turned around and left. The situation is urgent, and there is no room for Urahara Kisuke to delay for a moment. The others fell into silence again. The Shendu described in Hirako Shinji's words is like a terrifying shadow covering the sky and the sun, covering everyone's heart without any dead ends. Aversion to cold grew in the bottom of their hearts, eroding their flesh and blood, gnawing at their bones, until there was nothing left. Soul Society. 5th team building. Aizen is still, as usual, writing earnestly on the desk in front of the window, outlining every stroke so that the artistic strokes flow smoothly. Until the breeze blows, the feathers are lifted up. He just put down the brush and looked out the window. At this time, the sky was as blue as ever, with a few white clouds wandering in the blue, as comfortable as fish. Good life, beautiful views. Unfortunately, there is one less person who understands this beauty. When he spoke, fluctuations like water ripples appeared in the air, not far away. "Lord Aizen, it has been confirmed that Ikamaru Jin has been captured." A deep voice sounded in the room, without any emotion. Unexpected, Minister of Reason. There didn't seem to be any surprise on Aizen's face, and the eyes under the lens were still as calm as water. The little trick about Shubai didn't seem to have any effect on Shendu. He is also in existence who understands the power of the soul. The deep voice uttered again, "Master Aizen, do we need to change our plan?" Aizen nodded and looked sideways, staring in the direction of the voice. Many steps of the previous plan required Yin's assistance, but he is now a prisoner. "Yes, I only have you as my confidant now, so be careful." Tosin Kiname, who was hiding in the dark, was a little stunned when he heard this, and after a moment of silence, he respectfully responded, "Yes, Lord Aizen." Aizen turned his eyes out of the window again, and everything seemed extremely quiet, giving people a feeling of refreshment. "Perhaps we can be fishermen once." Hueco Mundo, Void Knight Palace, White Tower Laboratory. Shindu's expression was a little weird. Not long after Ikamaru Jin entered the prison, a new surprise appeared in front of him. The 13 steps towards the ultimate have been completed. Template progress, 75% to 80%. Unlock the treasure of the Holy Lord. Current abilities, Dragon Body, Fire Magic, Demon Magic, Dragon Charm, Pig Charm, Horse Charm, Mouse Charm, Dog Charm, Treasure of the Holy Lord. Ryatsu, Super Lingwei, to be evolved. It was a surprise, but not enough. It is not the tiger talisman that Shendu expected, but the so-called treasure of the Holy Lord. In the different dimensional space belonging to Shendu, there are no longer only those dragon minions who can only roar and kill, but countless treasures. In addition to the common gold, silver, jewelry, antique calligraphy, and paintings, there are more magic items. These include but are not limited to Golden Rooster King treasure, Petrification Potion and Antidote, Hell Mirror, Time Crystal Ball, and so on. The abilities of these magic items vary from big to small. The more powerful ones are like the Time Crystal Ball, which can open the time-space channel and travel through time. The side effect is that if you use too much, you will accelerate aging. The weaker ones are like the Golden Rooster King treasure, which only has endless wealth, which is useless to Shendu. He's not the kind of guy who only likes shiny things. Forget it, talking is better than nothing. Shendu is now open to all comers. Right now, there is only one tiger talisman left, so it is not particularly urgent. After all, he is about to start the next step of the plan. At that time, it will inevitably take another step towards the ultimate, and then it will be able to unlock all the templates of the Holy Master and enter a new world. The Holy Master template of the 12 spells is just the beginning. Shendu has a deep understanding of this. Behind it are the demonic energy of the 7 great demons and the 10 ghost shadow masks. Although the ghost mask is just the younger brother compared to the 8 great demons, it is still considered a good power, isn't it? He was really looking forward to what his subordinate Espada would look like after wearing the ghost mask. At that time, those guys hiding in the shadows will know what is the master of the shadows. Who is the real master of the Shadow Kingdom for? Chapter 90, this will be a battle involving our life, and Death Shendu often says that fighting and personal use should be separated. Like Haribel and Nelu, they have been working very hard recently. Therefore, Shendu did not arrange any tasks for them in the plan to go to the real world. Instead, he brought along 3 guys, Grimjow and Ulquiorra, who had been almost idle recently, and Yami. As for Stark, Shendu decided to put him in charge of guarding Shuya Palace. If Shinigami attacks him while he's away, Stark will definitely be able to support him until he comes back. As for Cortez, he was arranged to be rebuilt in the forest of Minos Grande. His battle with Tsubai nearly destroyed the entire Minos Grande forest. Another Minos Grande city that was originally under construction was also engulfed in a sea of fire and turned into nothing. So, do you 3 understand our mission this time? Shendu looked at the 3 people in front of him who were different in height, fat and thin, in order to avoid death as much as possible. Injuries are inevitable, but as long as you still have breath, it's not a big problem. It's not just you, the enemy is the same. Those guys at Visored are excellent experimental materials. Ulquiorra nodded calmly as usual and promised. Understood. Yami's fear of Shendu is deep in his bones, and he will not disobey his orders at all. Understood, Your Majesty. Only Grimjow seemed a little weak. I know, it's really troublesome. Shendu didn't take this guy's answer to heart. After several severe beatings from him, all that was left of Grimjow was his harsh words. Even the bones were crushed into powder by Shendu several times. In that case, let's set off. Shendu stretched out his palm and directly tore the space in front of him, revealing a deep black cavity. A group of 3 people stepped straight into it. This world, as the sky was torn apart like a curtain, the extremely terrifying Ryatsu appeared in the sky above Karakura town. As if the end was coming, the entire city suddenly fell into darkness. Thick dark clouds followed, covering the entire city. At the same time, the underground training ground of a Urahara store. Urahara Kisuk has just completed the 37th round of experimental research and development of submersible spiritual tools. He has just turned on the equipment and is preparing to record the experimental data. However, before his fingers could hit the keyboard, His whole body suddenly froze in place, as if he had been petrified, with cold sweat oozing out from his forehead. How come? He murmured to himself. This guy actually appears in this world without any scruples. Is he already preparing to go to war with Soul Society? Urahara Kisuke could no longer care about the experimental data this time, and suddenly broke out Ryatsu, expelling Shendu and spreading the influence of Ryatsu to the entire city. Tessai, get ready for battle. He immediately came to the Urahara store above to remind Ju Sheng. At this moment, there were only 2 of them in the Urahara store. The members of Visor have returned to their base not long ago. Abandoned warehouse. Visor was also the first to notice the violent and wanton Ryatsu. Just like his own character, he was extremely arrogant. This guy, Hirako Shinji, gritted his teeth and said unwillingly, "He is announcing his arrival to us. This battle is inevitable." As early as Hueco Mundo, Hirako Shinji already knew that Shendu's perception was extraordinary, and even the captain who was good at perception was far inferior to him. The 8-Yao double cliff kid barrier outside the abandoned warehouse is absolutely unable to resist Shendu's perception. As early as Shendu appeared, they visored had been completely exposed under his nose. Everyone, get ready for battle. Hirako Shinji looked around, stared at the faces of each visored member, and said seriously every word. This will be a battle of our life and death. Soul Society, the 12th Division Team Building, Technology Development Bureau, Lingbo Surveying Research Institute. Yaozhou looked at the alarm in front of him in panic, and his usually nimble fingers froze immediately, like gears that had not been oiled for a long time, making a tooth-breaking, crunching sound. Come on, something big happened. Absolute Shutara-level warning event. He pressed the notification button in a panic, sending the current alert to Kuratsuchi Mayuri. Team Captain, a Vasto Lord-class Minos Grande Ryatsu has appeared in this world. It is exactly the same as the Ryatsu that Captain Aizen fought last time. Yaozhou swallowed a mouthful of saliva and continued with a trembling voice. What should we do now? The figure of Kuratsuchi Mayuri appeared on the huge screen in front of him. This guy changed his headgear again, and he looked like a unicorn. After hearing Yeshu's report, a strange smile suddenly appeared on Kuratsuchi Mayuri's originally impatient face. What a big event. An incident of this magnitude is not something our Division 12 can handle. He knocked on the screen, making ABG sound. As a Shutora-level alert event, an announcement is issued to all captains of the Lingting. Let's just say that the villain who killed the 46th chamber has appeared in this world. The smile on Kuratsuchi Mayuri's face became more and more weird, which made Yaozhou's heart feel cold and his body trembled. It's really exciting. Before the words could even be finished, Kuratsuchi Mayuri hung up the communication. He had been looking forward to this big scene for a long time and couldn't miss it. Yaozhou, on the other hand, tremblingly used the communication equipment of the Technology Development Bureau to immediately notify all serving captains in Siri-IDI. Soon, the order for the captains' meeting was issued from the first team. All captains, except Sure Yukitake, arrived in the captain's conference room. Yamamoto Jinryu-sai was holding the 1.4-edged Wakahara, and wisps of flames rose from the bottom, but then extinguished in midair. He was in a very bad mood. Just now, when the guy from Yaozhou made the announcement, he was so excited that he burned another good sweet potato in a Coke. This also caused Yamamoto Jinryu-sai's eyes to be full of haze when he looked at these captain subordinates, as if he could eat people. About the information passed by the Technology Development Bureau, everyone should have seen it, right? He looked around, his majestic gaze becoming more and more stern, and wisps of fire flashed in those old eyes. Vasto Lord Shendu acted unscrupulously, slaughtering the living city, assassinating Central 46, and the captain of the 2nd Division, Suifeng, went to Hueco Mundo and has not returned yet, so he is probably in bad luck. This time Shendu appears in this world. He is undoubtedly declaring war on us. Chapter 91. Shendu keeps his word and does what he says. That's not good. Old man Shan seems to be very angry. When Kairaka Shunsui saw Yamamoto Jinryu-sai's expression, He immediately lowered the hat on his head to reduce his presence as much as possible. At this time, you shouldn't be in the limelight. He is the person who best understands Yamamoto Jinryusai's thoughts. There is no doubt that Shindu's various actions are undoubtedly bringing shame on the entire Soul Society. This kind of majestic appearance in this world does not break out his own Ryatsu behavior, but is tantamount to directly declaring war on Soul Society. In the face of such behavior, Yamamoto Jinryusai was still furious, as if he wanted to set the entire conference room on fire. We will definitely not be able to sit back and watch this. Vasto Lord Shindu must feel the pain. Byakuya Kachiki, Kairaku, Shunsui, Kamamura Sajin, he named everyone one by one, without even mentioning the title of captain, which is enough to show the anger in his mood at this time. And Aizen Suk, the four of you will lead your respective vice captains to the present world to surround and kill Vasto Lord Shindu. You must let him receive the punishment he deserves. 08 life or death. After hearing this, Byakuya Kachiki and Kamamura Sajin naturally had no objections and even agreed. Aizen frowned slightly and immediately agreed. He was not willing to meet Shindu at this point in time. Otherwise, some secrets may be exposed to Soul Society. Hey, Old Man Sean is really troublesome. As the most favored disciple of Yamamoto Jinryusai, Kairaku Shunsui naturally lacked respect in his words. Judging for what the intelligence shows, Shindu is no ordinary Vasto Lord. Is it really enough for just a few of us? He looked around, obviously without any confidence in his tone. As the laziest among many captains, Kairaku Shunsui does not seem to be a dedicated being. The remaining captains have to guard the Siriidii. Yamamoto Jinryusai looked around and seemed to suddenly remember something. By the way, why didn't Captain Ikamaru Jin attend this captain's meeting? Does he have any urgent business? Or does he have other more important things? When everyone was silent, Tosin Kaname answered the question in a low voice. A soldier from the 12th Division was missing in Lingbo outside Hueco Mundo, and a soldier from the 3rd Division was replenished and hospitalized at the same time. Captain Ikamaru Jin went to investigate the matter. It has been a week and there is still no news. After the words fell, the conference room fell into silence again. The result was clearly in front of them. Went to Hueco Mundo, no news for a week. After all, he was a captain-level Shinigami, but he just disappeared. Obviously, Shindu also has to bear the blame. On the other hand, Kuratsuchi Mayuri was still thinking about a question. When did the 12th Division call in a group of members from the 3rd Division to supplement their efforts? And it was also an important department like the Lingbo Surveying Research Institute. 2 consecutive waves of team members have disappeared. Didn't anyone inform me? The captain? However, he had no intention of looking at Aizen, but continued to lower his head and think about this problem. As early as in the process of many cooperations, Sailaporo told Kuratsuchi Mayuri some of the secrets about Aizen. The battle between Shindu and Aizen made him understand that Aizen poses a considerable threat. Kuratsuchi Mayuri doesn't want to be targeted by Aizen because of her own mistakes. This guy is definitely as dangerous as Shindu. Even in a sense, Aizen is more dangerous than Shindu. That Kaika Sujetsu move alone is enough to scare people. Silence. The captain's conference room fell into silence again. In a short period of time, 2 captains were lost in succession, and they were all lost in Hueco Mundo. This is the first time after the Hollow incident that Godei 13 has suffered such heavy losses. Captain Shiba Ishin, you also go to this world with them, and you must make Shindu pay the due price. Yamamoto Jinryusai suppressed his anger, and there was a flame burning continuously at the bottom of his cane. If it weren't for the fact that he still wanted to protect Siriidii, he would have wanted to go to this world himself. However, the more this happens, the more difficult it is to leave Siriidii. Otherwise, something big will definitely happen. Yamamoto Jinryusai can still tell which one is more important than the other. I see. Shiba Ishin's expression is also quite serious. Although he usually doesn't deal with official matters very much, and usually leaves it to Hitsugaya, who is the 3rd seat, to handle it, but he also heard the seriousness of the matter from his words just now. This is also taken seriously. It's getting more and more difficult. Kairaka Shunsui looked at Ikaru-jin's position during the captain's meeting on weekdays, with a trace of sadness in his eyes. Hopefully we can take care of this guy. He didn't have much confidence in this. Current world, Karakura Town. Grimjow felt the slightly thin spirit in the air with disgust on his face and said, dissatisfied, "This seemingly prosperous place is not even comparable to a hair in Hueco Mundo. For 37 as Minos Grande, what he values is not the number of people, but the density of souls." Even though Karakura Town is a land of heavy spirits, compared with the density of spirits in Shiya Palace, is still far behind. Although it's not as good as Shiya Palace, it's still better than other places in Hueco Mundo. Ulquiorra commented quite objectively. This also proves that the group of hollow Shinigami that His Majesty said is hidden in this city. I prefer the ample snacks here. Yami stared at the city below, looking ready to move. He is the only Espada who likes to devour human souls, and this is stopped by Shendu. Don't do anything stupid. Shendu reminded, the massive death of human souls will lead to an imbalance in the world's spirit cycle. Don't let me kill you to restore the cycle of spirit children. Hearing this, Yami's expression immediately calmed down, and he no longer showed any arrogance. Among the people present, he was most afraid of Shendu. Whenever there is something wrong in Shendu's eyes, Yami will immediately become restrained. Because he knows best, Shendu always does what he says. If I break your limbs, there will never be an additional wound. Absolutely true to his word. Chapter 92. Did you see that cool guy? Beat him. Shendu's words are not without purpose. The three realms are all in a dynamic spiritual cycle. The reduction of a large number of souls on either side will lead to the destruction of this cycle, causing the entire world to become completely static and fall into the fate of destruction. The Technology Development Bureau is often responsible for testing in this area. Once it is discovered that the Hueco Mundo spirit concentration has dropped sharply, Kuratsuchi Mayuri will usually search for human souls in the present world and bring them back to the Soul Society to maintain the stability of the spirit cycle. In his eyes, life is not important, and the human soul is more like a tool to maintain stability. When unable to interfere with the process of Minos Grande's eating and evolution, all Kuratsuchi Mayuri can do is to reduce the same number of human souls in the hope of achieving a stable new spiritual cycle. Kuratsuchi Mayuri did this not once. Yamamoto Jinryusai was also aware of this matter and acquiesced to Kuratsuchi Mayuri's behavior to some extent. He has only one purpose, and that is to protect Suriidei. For this reason, no matter how big a sacrifice you make, it is still worth it. Shout, that's extremely ironic. Shendu made a disdainful sound and looked at the powerful Ryatsu gradually coming in the sky in the distance. To his surprise, not all visor were dispatched. The only people who came before me were Hirako Shinji, Muguruma Kensei, Hachijin, and 2 people from the Urahara store. This posture. Shendu looked at Urahara Kisuke, who appeared not far away, raised the corners of his mouth, and greeted him like a good friend. Are you looking down on us a little too much? Facing the inquiry, Urahara Kisuke shook his head with a solemn expression. You can be careless and look down on anyone, but you are different. Shendu, you're a more dangerous opponent than Aizen. Shendu nodded, and his smile became brighter. Thank you for your compliment. It's well-deserved. He looked sideways at Yami next to him and ordered, Did you see that guy with white hair and a very arrogant expression? Go and beat him. Yami did not hesitate. The first time his Ryatsu locked Muguruma Kensei, he punched him out. A strong fist wind swept over Karakura Town, and along with it, there was a series of red bullets that exploded towards Muguruma Kensei like raindrops. The exploding virtual bullets were like a heavy rain, covering the entire sky in an instant, forming a red patch that obscured people's sight. Muguruma Kensei gritted his teeth in anger and swung his sword forward. Suddenly, a violent wind roared across the sky, instantly shattering the countless imaginary bullets and turning them into countless fragmented spirits, which were completely integrated into the wind. However, this is just the beginning of the battle. With a ferocious smile on her face, Yami activated the ring and immediately killed Mugiuruma Kensei. Its ferocious momentum is enough to make a child stop crying at night. Yami obeyed Shendu's orders without any doubt. Looking at the ferocious face in front of him, Mugiuruma Kensei once again realized Shendu's status among Minos Grande. Go to hell for me. Yami doesn't know what convergence is. Since you want to beat me up, I have to do it to the ultimate level. His fist, which was as big as a human head, hit Mugiuruma Kensei where his arms were crossed. Boom! Mugiuruma Kensei was directly thrown away by the violent force. In the white air explosion, he dragged a long-tail wave and penetrated several buildings in an instant. In an instant, the sky was filled with waves. Medical. And Yami had no intention of letting him go, and even started chasing after him. Even though Hirako, Shinji, and others wanted to help, they were powerless. Not far away, Shindu's Ryatsu was still locking them firmly. Once they make any changes, it will be the time for both sides to start a full-scale war. The two annoying guys have already left. Shindu snapped his fingers, signaling Urahara Kisuke to focus on his side. Now it's time to talk about the purpose of my trip. All members of Visored follow me back to Hueco Mundo to avoid this war. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he was opposed by Urahara Kisuke. Visored is my friend, and I would never do anything like betraying a friend. Now he and Visored are undoubtedly grasshoppers on a rope, both prospering and losing. Once Visored is abandoned, Soul Society will have no place for him. In this case, there's no need to talk about it. Shendu had no idea of negotiating at all, even as he committed crimes against Hirako, Shinji, and Hachijin. Grimjow, Ulquiorra, leave these two guys to you and get rid of them. Ulquiorra didn't say anything nonsense and rushed out immediately. As Vasto Lord, he is much stronger than Grimjow in terms of combat effectiveness. Even without the return blade, it is enough to suppress Hirako Shinji. Grimjow said angrily, "Damn it, he got ahead of me." After Hirako Shinji's opponent was snatched away by Ulquiorra, he could only choose Hachijin as his opponent. Two more battlefields are opened. Let the already devastated Karakura town become even more miserable. No one cares about the collapse and destruction of the city. Shendu is not Aizen, so there is no need to make any King Qi to go to the Spirit King Palace. The destruction of Karakura town will not be taken to his heart. Urahara Keisuke looked at Shendu solemnly, and the loose Ryatsu around him made the corners of his clothes flutter from time to time, making hunting sounds. Tessai Sakabashi stood behind him, arms folded in front of him, Wong Qian's, trying his best to show off the bulging muscles on his arms, as if full of ultimate power. However, everyone who knows him knows very well that this guy is an out-and-out long-range mage. The great Kid leader who is best at Kid can even use Kid forbidden techniques, such as space transfer and time stopping at his fingertips. You seem very confident, Urahara Kisuke said in a deep voice. Well, shouldn't I be confident? Shendu asked. Or, after you have a certain understanding of me, do you think I should still remain cautious? This rhetorical question immediately silenced Urahara Kisuke. How did he answer this? So far, Shendu is the most terrifying enemy he has ever seen. In terms of frontal combat capability, even Aizen is inferior to it. If this kind of existence continues to be cautious, is it still possible to have fun? Chapter 93, You Minos Grande don't know how to value your companions at all. The more arrogant, the better. A wry smile appeared on Urahara Kisuke's face. After all, that's all. We will have a certain chance. Shendu nodded with satisfaction. Only in this way will things become more interesting. Come, let's start fighting. Let me see what methods you have prepared. Urahara Kisuke was defined by Yawatch as one of the 5 special forces, symbolizing endless means that can solve all difficulties that arise. Even if the spiritual king, who was the wedge of the 3 realms, disappeared, he had created a corresponding replacement in advance. And he, Shendu, is just the king of Hueco Mundo, so Urahara Kisuke should have a better solution, right? Means? Urahara Kisuke shook his head helplessly, raised his cane, and pointed it at Shendu. There is only one battle. The crackling thunder light danced on the cane, and the thick clouds in the sky gradually emerged with wandering thunder and lightning, like a long snake, snaking in it. Had number 88. The flying dragon strikes the thief, and the sky-shattering thunder cannon. The next moment, a violent electric current wrapped around a terrifying spiritual beam shot out from the end of the cane, instantly occupying all the space in front of it. The air was filled with the smell of burning, as if it was burning through everything. Facing such a level of attack, Shendu didn't even have the intention to dodge. A bright blue bloomed in his eyes, and his mind turned into an invisible wall of light, which instantly stood in front of him, blocking all the flying dragons, thieves, and sky-shattering thunder cannons. Urahara Kisuke's eyes widened slightly, with a look of disbelief flashing through them. The spirit beam that was enough to destroy Minos Grande couldn't even make Shendu change his position. Although I had been mentally prepared for Shendu's power, my heart still shook when I saw this scene. Urahara Kisuke's expectations for this battle have already dropped below freezing point. Before the sight of the flying dragon hitting the thieves and the sky-shaking thunder cannon had faded, he looked at Tensai Sakabashi beside him. The two nodded in agreement, confirming the start of the battle plan. Tensai Sakabashi did not hesitate. While Shendu was still in place, he combined his hands and pressed downwards. Baikud's 61 Six-Staff Light Prison. As the former Grand Kid Captain, Sakabashi Tetsu, IF, size kid attainments are definitely not inferior to any Shinigami captain. Even if he was not close to Shendu, the Six-Stick Light Prison still accurately locked his position in the smoke and bypassed the defense of telekinesis, directly sealing Shendu's waist in place. The thundering carriage, the gap of the spinning wheel, this thing has lights clustered and divided into 6. High-level kid skills, such as the chanting described below, are even more accessible to Tensai Sakabashi, who is even far more proficient than Urahara Kisuke and others. In an instant, Shendu felt that the strength of the Six-Stick Light Prison that bound him had increased a lot. Not only that, Tensai Sakabashi did not stop his action of releasing Kid. One Baikud after another tried to block Shendu's actions and completely imprison him in place. Number 63 Baikud Chain Binding. Number 79 Baikud 9 Luminaries Binding, really a simple and effective way to fight, Shendu praised. Unfortunately for me, this level is a little bit less meaningful. Urahara Kisuke held up his cane, stared at Shendu with cold eyes, and said without hesitation, "The purpose of this method of fighting is not to kill you. Instead, we will weaken your combat effectiveness in the greatest possible way." He pressed his other hand on his bucket hat, and Ryatsu escaped from the sky in an unconcealable trend, and a strong pressure completely enveloped the area. This scene even surprised Shendu. Urahara Kisuke's Ryatsu even overwhelmed Hirako Shinji and Ulquiorra, who were in a fierce battle not far away. The one with the strongest combat effectiveness among the scientific researchers? A look of anticipation flashed in Shendu's eyes. "Let me see your true level. If you are strong enough, maybe the White Tower will be your final destination." Urahara Kisuke didn't know what Shendu was thinking at this moment. Under the restraints of Tensai Sakabashi Baikud, he believed it would be enough to trap Shendu for a while. And within this period of time, he can already complete the had that he has been preparing for a long time. The end of Senju is beyond the reach of Khotan's Dark Master's hand, and the Archer of the Sky cannot be reflected. The path of radiance spreads, the wind fanning the fire, when we gather together. There is no need to be confused. Just follow my instructions. Urahara Kisuke's staff is raised high until Shendu's position. Light bullets, 8 bodies, 9 strips, scriptures, quick treasures, big wheels, gray turrets lead the bow into the distance and dissipate brightly. Along with the chanting of the Kid mantra, countless shining cone-shaped light bullets appeared around it, as bright as stars, densely arranged in the sky. When seeing this scene, Shendu already understood what Urahara Kisuke was thinking. Isn't this different from the script it's directed towards? This time it was taken out in advance and used against him. It's really an honor. Countless light bullets swarmed around, like bullets that automatically locked their heads, all aimed at Shendu's location. Urahara Kisuk's eyes were stern, without any hesitation, as if he had just finished reciting the last sentence of the host mantra. Hat's 91 Senju Jiaoyin kills the cannon. In an instant, the countless light bullets shot towards the direction of Shendu. Boom! Suddenly, the world was filled with brightness. It was as if a second sun had appeared, shining down on the entire Karakura town. The sound of the explosion was like a continuous thunder, and the sound of explosion penetrated people's eardrums. The cross-shaped light shone in the sky above Karakura town, dispersing the thick clouds spreading around it, and even making the sky fall into a strange color. The interweaving of pink and dark outlines, a doomsday scene. Such a scene even caused the two battlefields in the middle of a fierce battle in the distance to stop their fighting in unison and turn their gazes in the direction of the explosion. Aren't you worried about your companions? Hachigen kindly reminded, it's not that you Minos Grande Arankar don't value your so-called companions. When he suddenly heard these words, even Grimjow was stunned in the air. His eyes widened, as if he had heard a big joke. Grimjow looked at Hachigen in astonishment, and then burst out into an extremely arrogant laugh. Ha 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 ha! What stupid things are you talking about? Shouldn't it be you who are worried about your companion? He is the only king of our Hueco Mundo. Your Majesty Shendu. How about Chapter 94? Is there enough surprise? Although Grimjow is usually very tough-mouthed, he mostly disrespects his companions and Shendu. But in front of outsiders, he still chose to try his best to maintain their image. Internal fighting is internal fighting, but you still need to pay attention to your appearance outside. Otherwise, if Shendu finds out about it, he will have to repair it, and he will be paralyzed from the beginning. When Hachigen heard Grimjow's words, his mood had already fallen under the ice. King of Hueco Mundo, even the powerful Minos Grande in front of him must surrender to Shendu? The opponent's strength was far more amazing than he imagined. A simple kid can't even restrain his actions. He has to be in hollow state before he can barely keep up with others. But even for such a powerful being, when facing Shendu, he still respectfully addressed him as Your Majesty. So how terrifying is Shendu's strength? Hachigen no longer dared to think about it anymore. This is not a battle with hope. He looked at the exploding cross of light, and his whole body seemed to be shrouded in a chill that penetrated deep into his bones. Hey, now it's a battle between us. Grimjow looked dissatisfied. Being distracted during battle is the biggest taboo. He instantly turned to Hachigen and kicked him hard, hitting his soft abdominal cavity. Immediately, the whole person fell from the sky like a meteorite, directly smashing a huge pit into the ground and sending up dust all over the sky. Ahem! Hachigen struggled to get up from it. One of the huge fangs protruding from the mask was even broken. The whole person looked miserable. 6 Yao ceiling formation. He no longer paid attention to other battlefield situations, but concentrated on dealing with Grimjow. Hachigen knew that if he didn't deal with the guy in front of him, his survival would be a huge problem. 6 green pillar-shaped barriers pointing to the east, west, south, and west of the world instantly sealed Grimjow within them. This is the Kid barrier created by Hachigen, which can seal captain-level opponents and trap their power inside. Grimjow directly rioted in the 6 Yao sealing formation. The madness materialized. Ryatsu swallowed everything in all directions in an instant, crushing everything around him with all his strength. However, the more he shattered the barrier, the more vigorous the barrier grew, until his limbs and head were also sealed together. Just when Hachigen was about to breathe a sigh of relief. Crunk, Leopard King. Grimjow's mood is obviously a bit more violent than in the original work. After all, anyone who is beaten every day will not feel better. Unable to break the barrier, this guy chose to die directly, and the blue Ryatsu instantly exploded in the barrier. The blade in his hand also disappeared in an instant and merged into his body. The original slender body looked a bit rickety, but it was more in line with the hunting form. The original humanoid posture has also been transformed into that of a white leopard. The blue eyeshadow extends to the temples. The ears become leopard ears. The hair hangs down to the waist, and the ferocious mask moves to the forehead. White skeletal armor grows all over the body, and a segmented leopard tail with black tips grows from the back. The tips of its limbs also turn black and grow long manes and sharp claws, directly transforming into the most violent cheetah. After returning to the sword, Grimjow immediately unfolded the claws of the Leopard King and instantly tore the entire 6-Yao ceiling formation into pieces. Hachigen looked shocked, but he did not forget to add new barrier and seal off. He is not good at fighting, but he is good at enchantment and sealing. Even his boss, Tessai Tsukabshi, is far inferior to him. The army is 8 inches away, and there is no reason to retreat. The blue bar, the white bar, the black bar, the red bar. They bite each other and sink into the sea. The city gate with dragon tail, the city gate bitten by tiger, the city with turtle armor gate, Fengjue's city gate, Silu Simon. Hachigen put his hands together, showing a serious attitude. The 4-Beast Gate is the strongest defensive barrier created by China, and it is also the strongest sealing barrier. Even Shendu had blocked a few breaths back then, buying considerable time for his companions to evacuate. The huge city gate fell from the sky, and Grimjow, who had just escaped from the 6-Yao ceiling formation, was sealed into it again before he could move. It would be a little difficult to escape this time. And this time, the explosion of Urahara Kisuk's Senju Kaiten Tai cannon finally subsided. The stirring dust and smoke also gradually disappeared in the hunting wind until they disappeared completely. Shindu's figure loomed among them, reappearing in front of Urahara Kisuk and Tessai Tsukabshi. However, the appearance shocked the two of them. How come? Had number 91 only caused this injury? Whether it is Urahara Kisuk or Tessai Tsukabshi, it is difficult to believe what is happening in front of them. In the opposite sky, Shendu was walking in the air almost intact, looking at the two people with calm and indifferent eyes. And in his chest, a faint crack appeared. Not even a drop of blood seeped out. And the crack is still healing at a speed visible to the naked eye until it completely disappears. Being able to cause this little injury is something you should be proud of. Shendu said calmly, "Don't forget, before the battle, you treated me as an equal being. Hear this." Urahara Kisuk's originally shocked expression gradually calmed down. He sighed softly and showed his usual playful expression again. Yes. According to this calculation, the results of using the cannon with bright hands are already astonishing. After all, if it were Captain Yamamoto, we would have been burned to ashes as early as the battle began. Shendu nodded and agreed with his statement. Urahara Kisuk adjusted his fisherman hat that was blown askew by the wind and looked at Shendu seriously. Actually, the Senju Jiaotian Tai cannon is just a feint. All we have done is just to hide the real attack. As soon as these words came out, Shendu's expression suddenly changed, and his originally handsome face suddenly became distorted, looking somewhat painful. Did you hide another method in that, kid? He covered his face with his hands, hiding his pain. Seeing this, Urahara Kisuk breathed a sigh of relief and explained softly, "For a being like you, Shendu, if no special measures are taken, the result of waiting for us will only be death." Just when he was about to explain his method, he was suddenly interrupted by Shendu. "Forget it. This kind of acting takes too much effort." Urahara Kisuk's expression suddenly froze, as if he was suspended. Shendu immediately released his hands, covering his face, and let them fall down naturally. The relaxed and joking smiles appeared again in front of Urahara Kisuk and Tessai Tsukabshi. "How about it? What's the surprise?" Chapter 95, Mr. Shendu. "Please be careful, exquisite design." Shendu praised. "If I hadn't read the script in advance, I wouldn't have thought of this. But the greater confidence still comes from oneself." He didn't mind exposing some of his trump cards to Urahara Kisuk. Faced with an unsolvable ability like the Horse Talisman, Urahara Kisuk, who claims to have countless means, will come up with what methods to deal with it. Very curious about this. Similar to this method, Shendu explained, "It doesn't work for me, and the same goes for external injuries." As he spoke, he stretched out his fingers and lightly scratched his arm. The white fingers were glowing with a red color, as if they were solidified magma. Huge cracks were suddenly torn into the skin, revealing the flesh and blood inside, giving people a ferocious feeling. But 100 hasn't waited for Urahara Kisuke and others to see clearly. The injury was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Shendu's destruction speed cannot even keep up with its recovery speed. It's somewhat unrealistic to use words like high-speed regeneration to describe me now. Perhaps complete regeneration? After being fused with Jayaku, Aizen can also achieve a recovery speed that exceeds high-speed regeneration after evolving to a certain level. Even if half of the body is cut off, it can be fully restored. Like Ikamaru Jin's Bankai is also directly neutralized. But compared with Shindu's horse charm, this level of recovery is still somewhat behind. Aizen is not immune to the effects of Sealed Kid or some kind of negative buff. And Aizen, who is fused with Jayaku and reached the level of a transcendent, was also directly sealed in Kid by the 9-6 Kyo fire frame. But similar means, if used on Shendu, will be directly ineffective. Just like that, Urahara Kisuke applies this strategy to Shendu. Even if the hidden method was not enough to kill Shendu, it could still seriously injure him. But he didn't expect that it would be completely ineffective. "Although I don't know what your specific method is," Shendu said calmly, "but I can still feel the strange power trying to enter my soul along the wound. The only pity is that this power was directly wiped out before it had time to play its real role." Veins appeared on the palm of Urahara Kisuke's hand holding the cane, showing his mood at the moment. But soon, he returned to his usual expression. "Hey, I really underestimate you." Urahara Kisuke is as calm as ever again, as if everything is still under control. "It seems that we can only resort to inferior means." As his voice fell, 5 figures suddenly appeared on the roofs of buildings in all directions. The ferocious Bone Mask, the surging and powerful Ryatsu, and the Shurkai Zampakit with different postures. The remaining members of Visored. The position where Saragaki Hiyori and the others stood happened to surround Shendu in the center. Since outsmarting them is out of the question, the only option is to attack by force. A look of helplessness flashed across Urahara Kisuke's eyes. A brainy character like him hates this kind of fighting method the most. Tessai Sakabashi took his place. Saragaki Hiyori, Yadumura Lisa, Love Akoa, Torabashi RJR, Kunamashiro. A total of 6 people, with Tessai Sakabashi as the core, formed a 6-pointed star formation, which happened to put Shendu in the most central position. Mr. Shendu. Even when facing enemies, Tessai Sakabashi is still very polite and uses honorifics. This is the Kid Forbidden technique that I developed when I was the Grand Kid Chief. Because it involves the power of space and time, it was banned by Rune 46. Please be careful. The way this guy acted made Shendu think highly of him. Compared to the violent guys like Visored, Tessai Sakabashi is really a pretty good person. At least, he is absolutely competent as the elder kid. I see. Shendu nodded, but had no intention of interrupting them. Whether it is the power of space or time, demonic magic is involved. Don't think that Shinigami's lifespan is long enough. Compared with an immortal demon like the Holy Lord, Shinigami is somewhat insignificant. In his long and endless life, the Holy Lord's attainments in demonic magic far surpassed that of his brothers and sisters. Of course, his brothers and sisters also master a considerable degree of demonic magic, such as Bazaar, Curse Lawn, Sawfong, etc., all of whom are quite powerful demon mages. It's just that the endless life in hell has already polished off their wisdom, and there is not much left. The military minister is 8 inches tall. Tessai Sakabashi chanted the Kid incantation as even black chains emerged from behind him. A black spiritual object like 9 luminaries appear behind him, and the same scene appeared behind the other 5 people. Ryatsu surges through it, as vast and endless as the ocean. The entire Karakura town was enveloped in this mixed Ryatsu, and even spread to other cities. As the Kid mantra was chanted, thick and sturdy chains one after another were like giant snakes, meandering under the clouds and shuttling in the roaring thunder. This scene is like the end of the world. You know, Tensai Tsakabashi, Love Aikawa, and Torabashi RJR are genuine captain-level Shinigami. As for the other three, after Hollow puts on the mask, their Ryatsu is comparable to that of the captain. The 6 captain-level Ryatsu, fused together, have formed a powerful force that cannot be ignored. The 3.0 Kid inspired by this power is not weaker than Kid number 99, and even exceeds it. Black chains danced around Shendu, as if to completely seal it inside. The black spiritual beings continued to breed chains, carrying the sound of sizzling electricity, completely covering the sky above Karakura town. The city that was still daytime suddenly fell into darkness. 6 Yaoban, Tensai Tsakabashi puts his hands together, and powerful materialized Ryatsu rises from his body. Others also followed his example and released their Ryatsu to their heart's content. Under their feet, in midair, the 6-pointed star array was completely formed, and the endless black chains completely surrounded Shendu and sealed it, until I can no longer feel the slightest bit of Shendu's Ryatsu. Chapter 96. This is not a battlefield we can interfere with. This level of Bakud barrier. Urahara Kisuke stood beside Tensai Tsakabashi, his eyes fixed on the center of the barrier. Can we really hold it firmly and seal that guy? Tensai Tsakabashi had cold sweat sliding down his forehead, soaking his thick beard. Very reluctantly. If Mr. Shendu is really compared to Captain Yamamoto, this level of Bakud not. Far from enough. As soon as he finished speaking, the Bakud barrier seal formed by the black chain in the distance began to glow with red light. It is mixed with bright golden color, as if strands of substantial magma are flowing inside. Really, Urahara Kisuke clenched his cane and immediately pointed it in the void in front of him. Bakud number 81, splitting void. As his voice fell, a transparent wall of light immediately separated himself from Tensai Tsakabashi, preventing the impact of the aftermath. The moment they saw the golden and red intertwined light 08, the members of Visored also realized that something was wrong. Even if they gave up maintaining the barrier of the 6 Yaoban, they activated Shuinpa to evacuate far away. Boom! Violent flames shot out from it and instantly rose into the sky above Karakura town. The Bakud barrier released by the 6 captain-level Ryatsu couldn't even trap Shendu for a few seconds. The moment the black chain completely blocked it, the endless demonic energy of fire burst out from its pores, like a volcano erupting, instantly covering the entire sky of Karakura town. The originally gloomy clouds were also covered by the violent and raging flame clouds at this moment. The whole city seemed to be shrouded in red. The flames of the demonic energy of fire completely engulfed the chain, turning into endless spiritual fuel, and the last trace of power burned in the sky. Urahara Kisuke and Tensai Tsakabashi, who were closest to Shendu, endured an unimaginable impact, enough to withstand Had's splitting void below number 89, and even made an overwhelmed crunching sound, as if they had reached their limit. The aftermath alone is enough to make it difficult for them to continue to defend themselves. Urahara Kisuke's face looked a little ugly, and the hem of his clothes fluttered in the wind, making a hunting sound. He pressed his fisherman's hat with one hand and looked forward fiercely, staring at all the changes in it. Shendu stepped out of the 6 Yaoban, not even injured, and his whole body was burning with raging fire, as if everything was going to be burned up. The entire city is shrouded under the pressure of his Ryatsu, and it is even expanding towards further cities. Such terrifying movements naturally attracted the attention of the other 3 battlefields. Hachigen worked hard to support the 4 beasts to block the gate, blocking all movements of Grimmjow as much as possible. Once Grimmjow destroys a barrier, he will use Ryatsu to repair it as quickly as possible. So until now, Grimmjow still hasn't made any military exploits. so that this manic guy's mood became more and more explosive, and he might go completely crazy at any time. On the other hand, Muguruma Kensei and Yami, two guys with similar temperaments, were fighting with their fists at this moment. The violent wind swept across the battlefield where they were, destroying everything in sight. All were completely shattered. Ha ha ha. Do you feel it? Yami's smile looked a little crazy. This is the power of His Majesty Shendu. This is the supreme existence that rules the entire Hueco Mundo. The only god in Shuya Palace, and even the entire Hueco Mundo. As he spoke, he raised his fist the size of a human head and slammed it down on Muguruma Kensei. Boom! Muguruma Kensei was still shocked by Shendu's strength, but accidentally, he was punched away by a guy like Yami who didn't care about martial arts. I am the strongest Espada under His Majesty's command. Yami laughed wildly in the air, as if he had won. On the other side, Ulquiorra slashed at Hirako Shinji at a strange angle. But what's even more weird is that he actually happened to look at the blade in Hirako Shinji's hand. The sound of gold and iron interlacing echoed in the sky, even overpowering the roaring sound in the flame cloud. Although I'm still a little uncomfortable with it, Ulquiorra said expressionlessly, but we can finally fight under this influence. The huge penetrating wound on his chest was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. High-speed regeneration. There are few beings among Espada who have mastered this ability, and Ulquiorra's is the best among them. It's just a penetrating chest injury, which is not worth mentioning at all. Hirako Shinji even twitched the corners of his mouth, finding it difficult to accept this fact. The last time I faced Shendu, the power of this counterstroking was directly ineffective, but this time I changed to Minos Grande, and he adapted quickly. If this continues, Hirako Shinji will have self-doubt. Does this backstroke have no effect on Minos Grande at all? Ulquiorra's ability to adapt to the environment far exceeded Hirako Shinji's expectations. But after being stabbed a few times, he became familiar with various attacks, and could even counterattack Hirako Shinji. I'll cut off your limbs and take you back to Hueco Mundo. Ulquiorra seemed to be saying something ordinary. This is His Majesty's order. It is also His Majesty's wish. When the dull sound of gold and iron continued to echo in the sky, like a magnificent symphony. It wasn't just Shinigami who noticed Shendu Ryatsu's outburst. There's also the Quincy clan in the city next door, one of the few pure-blooded Quincy's. Ishida's house. A girl in school uniform stood in front of the window, looking in the direction of Karakura town with a worried look on her face. This Ryatsu, violence, destruction, violence, and all negative emotions are contained in it. When he sensed this huge Ryatsu, Masaki Kurosaki seemed to see the destruction of the world. Just a moment of hesitation. She just ran towards the door without hesitation. However, as soon as he reached the door, he was stopped by a voice. "Where are you going, Masaki?" A man in casual clothes stood not far from the door, staring at Kurosaki Masaki with calm eyes. "I know without asking. Don't go to that kind of place. It's no longer a battlefield that we can interfere with. If you participate, you will only end up with a tragic death." Chapter 97, Kurosaki Masaki's Choice. This is not a one-person war/T. Kurosaki Masaki looked hesitant. Ishida Longxian is still as calm and indifferent as before, as if the battle outside has nothing to do with him. You don't think that because you have amazing talents and have mastered all the Quincy's fighting methods, you can set foot on that battlefield, do you? A battle of this level is enough to involve the entire Ishida family, and not even a scrap will be left behind. He looked out the window and stared at the sky of Karakura town, where there was a terrifying flame cloud covering the entire city. It's not clear what happened to Hueco Mundo, though. But the current Quincy is no longer enough to compare with it. We can't even completely eliminate Minos Grande, let alone the Shinigami. Ishida Ryuxian's eyes moved and fell on Kurosaki Masaki's face, and he said seriously word by word, "We pure-blood Quincy should not bleed easily." Kurosaki Masaki hesitated for a moment, but his eyes became firm again, and he answered with the same serious attitude. Xiaolong will consider the Quincy race and will consider many things in the future before taking action. This is your own idea. But I'm not you, I can't do this. Her innocent and kind character simply does not allow such a horrific disaster to continue to break out in the city. If you follow orders, you won't do what you can do. If I treat others without mercy, I will never forgive myself tomorrow. After that, Kurosaki Masaki took his Reiko weapon and left Ishida's house in a hurry. Looking at his retreating figure, Ishida Rusen pondered for a moment and then ordered his maid Katajiri Hei to prepare to fight. Even though I know that the hell ahead is death, but still moving forward. Karakura Town. Shindu used the demonic energy of fire to shatter the 6 Yao Ban and stepped on the sky unscathed, looking directly in the direction of Urahara Kisuk. Unfortunately, the so-called inferior fighting methods you say don't seem to have any effect. When he stretched out his right hand and said seriously in an invitational manner, instead of resisting, join us. In my eyes, Kion and Shinigami are just 2 different races, nothing more. There is no inherent hatred, let alone the so-called life and death struggle. Joining Hueco Mundo, I will let you see a broader world and the true truth of the world. When hearing these words, Urahara Kisuk narrowed his eyes slightly. It's not that he doesn't believe Shindu's words. From his confident and proud attitude, it is not difficult to judge the correctness of these words. But what Urahara Kisuk cares about is the last half of the sentence. The so-called, the real iron correlation of the world, the master of Hueco Mundo, seems to know more than he expected. Forget it, even though I'm very excited. Urahara Kisuk waved his hand and refused, but I prefer life here in this world. Not that much. Before he finished speaking, he felt a hot breath approaching him, as if it was going to burn his body. Restraint. Shindu no longer concealed Ryatsu, but released it to his heart's content, releasing the violence hidden in his heart. Facing Shindu at close range, Urahara Kisuk felt an unspeakable sense of suffocation. No one can refuse my invitation. Shindu's palm stretched out and covered Urahara Kisuk's face. As the former 3rd officer of the 2nd Division, Urahara Kisuk's close combat ability is worthy of recognition. Without instant coax activated, even Shihoin Yoruchi would have a hard time taking it down without taking any damage. And this is all due to its superb fighting skills. The moment Shindu's palm fell, Urahara Kisuk had already bowed down and avoided the blow. A fighting method full of flaws. He even didn't forget to joke again, but thinking about it, noble beings like Mr. Shindu are generally not very good at fighting skills. Facing the ridicule, Shindu just smiled and said indifferently, "Cade. Do you know why that is?" Urahara Kisuk dodged to a distance, looking at the smile on his face, and suddenly felt a bad premonition in his heart. Why? Shindu moved his wrists as if he was warming up. That is because pure strength and speed are often more effective than skill. Urahara Kisuk only felt a flash of light and shadow in front of him, and then an irresistible shadow covered his face. An irresistible force acted on his head. Shindu held Urahara Kisuk's old businessman face with one hand. Look, isn't this a catch? He was swinging up and down as if he were playing with some kind of ball toy. Urahara Kisuk is not a good boy either, and does not react when he is manipulated. He immediately stabbed Shindu's heart with Hongji in his hand. It's really, before Shindu could wait for the blade to fall, he swung his arm and threw Urahara Kisuk away. He immediately drew a beautiful arc, instantly demolishing several buildings, and even almost affected Grimjow's battlefield. The completely crushing battle made Tezai Sakabashi on the side feel his scalp numb and break out in cold sweat. Even when facing Yamamoto Genryusai, he had never felt so powerless. Neither had nor Bakud, and even the Kid Forbidden technique involving space and time are completely ineffective against it. Okay, it's your turn. Shindu sets his sights on Tezai Sakabashi. Bakud number 61. Chains and binding. Tezai Sakabashi immediately released Bakud in the hope of hindering his actions. However, as soon as the golden chain landed in front of Shindu, it was slapped away by Shindu, and the flame cloud in the sky rained down raging flames, instantly burning the Baekud into nothingness. Don't show this level of Baekud, Shendu mocked. You should start with Baekud number 99. When he finished speaking, he saw Tensai Tsukabshi clasping his hands together and looking at Shendu seriously. Baekud's 99 forbidden. The leather strips and nails suddenly appeared in Shendu's hands, sealing them together with lightning speed. Baekud's 99-second swastika ban. The first song, Stop the Tension. The huge strip of cloth crossed the space and wrapped around Shendu's body, completely binding him up. And this is just the beginning. Tensai Tsukabshi continued to keep his hands clasped together and chanted loudly. Second song by Lien Bol. Dozens of spikes appeared outside the white cloth strips, penetrating Shendu without any hindrance. Tensai Tsukabashi's expression was extremely serious, and he said word by word. Final song, Typhoon. Chapter 98. As the king of Hueco Mundo, I always keep my word. The moment his voice fell, a huge stone tablet with a word engraved on it suddenly appeared above Shendu's head. Tensai Tsukabshi didn't hesitate at all. He even controlled the stone tablet and smashed it toward Shendu, trying to cause some damage to him. Boom! The blazing flame turned into an endless pillar of fire and soared into the sky, instantly burning everything including strips of cloth and belts. Its violent momentum even burned down the huge stone tablet on the top of the sky, without leaving any trace behind. Number 99 Baekud, invalid. Tensai Tsukabshi was not ready to give up yet, and tried to struggle one more time. However, just when he was about to continue fighting the enemy with Kid, Shendu burst out with astonishing speed and arrived in front of him in an instant. Then, in the same way, he pressed one hand on Tensai Tsukabashi's rough old face. You can't favor one over the other. Shendu directly rounded his arms and threw Urahara Kisuk in the direction of flying. Boom! Because of his weight, the movement caused by Tensai Tsukabshi is far more shocking than that of Urahara Kisuk. When the smoke and dust in the sky dispersed, two embarrassed figures staggered out from the ruins. Cough, cough. Urahara Kisuk spit out the dust in his mouth. It's really embarrassing. Tensai Tsukabshi on the side is not much better. Shindu's power is simply not something they can resist. And at such a speed, he couldn't even react. As Shendu said before, if it is this level of speed and power, then the so-called skills are indeed of little use. Store manager, is there any other way? Tensai Tsukabashi's confidence was greatly lost, and he no longer had enough courage to face Shendu. Not only was the self-created kid useless, even Baekud number 99 was just like paper in front of Shendu, with no effect at all. Of course there is. Urahara Kisuk looked at the demon-like figure above the ceiling. Now that we can't handle this guy, then use external force. As soon as he finished speaking, a bright arrow of light pierced the sky at the end of the western sky, tore through the flame clouds, and headed straight for Shendu's heart. Snapped! The divine destruction that was enough to tear the steel skin of Minos Grande was directly hit by the god in the palm of his hand. Spirit arrows? Shendu looked towards the direction where the sacred destroying arrow was flying, and saw a figure of a girl in school uniform standing in the sky, holding a short bough of spirit sun, facing him. Quincy. Looking at the figure in front of him, Shendu seemed to recall the girl's identity. Still one of the few pure-blooded Quincy, the country Kurosaki Masaki, a genius girl among the pure-blood Quincy, has mastered all the fighting skills of the Quincy at a young age, and her strength is close to that of a Shinigami captain. As expected, she and Shiba teamed up to kill Subai. Of course, this accident has happened. Subai died early in Shendu's hands. But this does not prevent Aizen from creating a new and more powerful Subai. Okay, we have one more goal for this trip. Shendu snapped his fingers, flames burned from his fingertips, and the surrounding air became distorted. The smell of sulfur that pervaded all directions quickly filled the entire city, and the temperature also rose accordingly. Kurosaki Masaki. Shendu called her name calmly and calmly. The girl holding the Lingzi's short bow was immediately stunned on the spot, and even the bow and arrows were relaxed. Hey, you know me? Fortunately, although this guy is a bit stupid by nature, he is not that stupid. Wait a minute, whether you know me or not. You must stop your current evil deeds. Kurosaki Masaki once again pulled up the Ryatsu short bow, with divine destruction already placed on it, and the powerful Ryatsu made the surrounding air tremble. Countless souls gather on it and are about to burst out with astonishing power. Countless people have died because of your actions. The whole city has fallen into doomsday. Masaki Kurosaki looked at Shindu seriously. This kind of behavior is tantamount to destroying the world. Faced with the cross-examination, Shindu spread his hands and answered with a smile. Then you mean that the Shinigami and the Quincy can kill Minos Grande at will, even if they completely erase all traces of their existence? As a pure-blood Quincy, you should know about this, right? All the hollows who died in the hands of the Quincy will not even have their souls left. Is this what you call kindness? Kurosaki Masaki's expression remained firm. He will not be affected by these words at all. So, is evil? Before she could finish her rebuttal, she was interrupted by Shindu. It's just a one-sided understanding to summarize the image of the entire group. Is this what you call kindness? A trace of hesitation appeared on Kurosaki Masaki's face. However, at this moment, Urahara Kisuk flew into the air again and reminded loudly, Miss Quincy, don't be fooled by Shindu. Regardless of whether there is a good Su among the Su group, at least, Shindu's current behavior is evil and unforgivable. Be sure to point your short bow at this villain. Hearing the reminder, Kurosaki Masaki immediately fixed his gaze, and the sacred destruction on the Reiko's short bow also shined brightly. That's right. You must not be allowed to continue. Shindu sighed lightly and looked at Urahara Kisuk with dissatisfaction. You guys really don't make people worry at all. It seems that your punishment is not far enough. He moved his arms, and Ryatsu combined with the demonic energy of fire, forming an extremely terrifying pressure that instantly enveloped the area. In that case, let's remove one of your arms first. The moment he finished speaking, Urahara Kisuk's eyes widened instantly, but his pupils shrank to the limit. Shindu's movement speed even exceeds his reaction speed. Before the Zanpakuto Hongji in his hand could even be raised, the terrifying slender figure had already turned into a shadow, looming in front of Urahara Kisuk. Whoosh! Kurosaki Masaki is not the kind of person who is indecisive, even if he shoots the holy destruction. But the result was still the same as before. The sacred destruction composed of spirit seeds was held in Shindu's hands without looking at it. As the king of Hueco Mundo, Shindu looked at Urahara Kisuk calmly and said seriously, I always keep my word. TSK. Along with the sound of flesh and blood being torn apart, an arm flew directly into the air. The blood that was spilled fell like rain. Chapter 99, Stubborn Girl. It's time for you to reshape your outlook on life. Urahara Kisuk looked at the arm flying into the sky with a stunned look on his face. Extraordinarily familiar. It wasn't until the pain came that he realized that Shindu meant what he said. However, Urahara Kisuk couldn't care about himself and quickly reminded Sakabashi Tetsusai on the side. Tetsai, be careful with this guy's speed. But before he finished speaking, Sakabashi Tieli seemed to have followed in his footsteps. Another thick arm flew into the air, scattering countless blood like rain into Karakura town. Before the two of them could grab his arms, they saw two balls of flame rising into the sky, instantly burning them to ashes without any trace left. Under the severe pain, they could only reluctantly activate Shunpa. While staying away from Shindu, they also performed Kade to stop the bleeding. As Kid Masters, Urahara Kisuk and Tetsai, Sakabashi's Kade level is not as good as that of Uno Hanaretsu, the captain of the fourth team, but they are still much better than the average team members of the fourth team. It may not be as good at prescribing the right medicine, but it still has a pretty good effect on this kind of tear trauma. In just a few seconds, Urahara Kisuk and Tetsai, Sakabashi stopped the blood spurting from the fracture. They no longer care about the pain, but stared at Shindu with extremely vigilant eyes, paying full attention. The terrifying speed that erupted in this instant was beyond their cognitive scope. Even if Mizuruchi breaks out in a flash, it can't be so fast, right? As a senior kid leader, Tezsai Tsukabshi still has an unclear understanding of the strength of Shinigami captains. Absolutely not. Urahara Kisuke covered the broken arm with one hand and stared at Shendu. It's not just the speed. Shindu's strength is absolutely amazing. It actually broke your and my Ryatsu defenses in an instant, and even tore the arms apart. Now, we really can only wait for reinforcements. Facing Shendu, who is almost invincible in terms of pure power and speed, Urahara Kisuke couldn't even think of a suitable method to deal with it. Previously, the Senju Kaiten Tai Cannon was used to break its defense, and the sealed kid was driven into Shindu's body. There was even a poison specifically designed to suppress Minos Grande's soul. But this method has no effect at all for Shendu. Tezsai Tsukabashi's attempts to use the 6-Yao swastika ban and the 99 Bakud ended in failure. The strength of Shendu was also displayed in front of them for a time. He had never encountered such an opponent before, so much so that Urahara Kisuke's claws were numb in a short period of time. Stop what you're doing. Kurosaki Masaki is not weak at all. When even 2 rounds of holy annihilation were fired in the direction of Shendu, the air was torn apart in an instant. However, the threat factor of her attack at this level is not even as good as the 999 Bakud, holding scrap ironly. When the divine destruction came, Shendu just slapped it away with 2 hands, without even leaving a white mark. What a stubborn girl. Shendu glanced at Kurosaki Masaki. You weren't fooled by Urahara Kisuke's words, were you? Death, for humans, is nothing more than a change of soul residence. The beings who died in this battle will appear in new forms in Soul Society's Rukongai. Kurosaki Masaki didn't say a word, but the Reiko short bow in his hand drew the bowstring again and got into a fighting posture. More importantly, Shendu walked in the air, walking towards Kurosaki Masaki step by step. The sacred destruction that shot towards him was always dodged by him at weird angles, without producing the slightest effect. A vasto lord, who only knows mindless destruction, appeared in Hueco Mundo and slaughtered a large number of hollows. Shendu said calmly. One of the 2 guys not far away also killed countless virtual groups in Hueco Mundo. That vasto lord was the creation of a certain Shinigami, and Urahara Kisuke was once the Shinigami's captain. Do you know the consequences of their wanton slaughter in Hueco Mundo? Kurosaki Masaki's thoughts gradually went astray under his remarks. What consequences? She asked subconsciously, but she quickly covered her mouth, and a trace of annoyance appeared in her eyes. When the number of voids decreases significantly, it will lead to the destruction of the balance of the spirit cycle. Shendu explained softly. If the human souls in this world are not reduced, it will lead to the destruction of the world. Kurosaki Masaki's beautiful eyes widened with a look of disbelief. However, Urahara Kisuke in the distance did not refute it. Obviously, this statement is correct. In fact, as the former captain of the 12th Division, Urahara Kisuke founded the Technology Development Bureau and planned most of the 12th Division's scientific researchers into it. Regarding the issue of spirit sun circulation, he had already discovered it 100 years ago. The virtual soul and the human soul are in dynamic balance to a certain extent. Once one side is reduced excessively, it will lead to the destruction of this balance, leading to unimaginable disasters. Kuratsuchi Mayuri once destroyed an entire city in order to maintain the balance of the spirit cycle. This guy is a dehumanized being. How come? These words undoubtedly had a great impact on Kurosaki Masaki's outlook on life, and even made her almost unable to hold the Reiko short bow firmly. Join Hueco Mundo. Shendu took the opportunity to extend an invitation to him. I will let you see the truth of the world clearly. Sometimes, killing does not mean evil. Kurosaki Masaki's eyes flashed, obviously struggling in his heart. No matter what you say, it can't change the fact that the city is now destroyed. I must stop your behavior. I saw its Ryatsu skyrocketing, and the wild sacred destruction condensed on the spirit short bow, bursting out with astonishing power. Really are. Shendu was helpless. Why is it that no one wants to believe me when I tell the truth? In that case, before he could finish his words, the azure blue sacred annihilation penetrated the space in front and approached Shendu in an instant. The speed this time was far greater than the previous attacks. By the time Shendu found out, he couldn't react. The sound of tearing flesh and blood also appeared in Shendu's heart. A huge hole appeared in the chest, and blood gurgled out of it. It was as if death was beckoning. Force. Chapter 100. Captain Aizen seems to still have the same style. Did you make it? Kurosaki Masaki stared ahead blankly, enough to see the scene on the other side from the penetrating wound in Shendu's chest. I prevented this disaster. Although he succeeded, Kurosaki Masaki didn't know why. Shindu's previous words still echoed in his mind, and he couldn't help but fall into deep thought. If all that is true is what Shendu said, then the culprit that caused all this is Shinigami? Kurosaki Masaki turned his attention to Urahara Kisuke and the others, as if asking. However, Urahara Kisuke motioned for her to take another look at Shendu. Success or something. The wound on Shindu's chest is healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's a little too early to say. As for the disaster, it has just begun. 7'5" As soon as he finished speaking, he appeared directly in front of Kurosaki Masaki and immediately punched her in the abdomen. The terrifying power instantly acted on her slightly petite body. The next moment, Kurosaki Masaki turned into a shooting star and disappeared into the sky instantly. Boom! The strong aftermath directly caused the ruins on the surrounding ground to rush away, stirring up dust tens of meters high. Shendu would not show any mercy to this kind of pure-blood Quincy with static blood defense. If she doesn't let her see her own strength, how can she make this guy feel more stable? Okay, now it's her turn. Shendu once again sets its sights on Urahara Kisuke and Tessai Tsakabashi. Although Tessai Tsakabashi isn't of much use, but Hueco Mundo doesn't want you to eat alone. Let's take it away together. For him, Tessai Tsakabashi's role is obviously not as good as Urahara Kisuke's. As for the simple injury of a broken arm, it is a simple matter for Mafushu. Even the enhanced version of the meat supplement developed by Seo Laporo and Kuratsuchi Mayuri can easily recover injuries, such as broken arms. So what Shendu calls a small punishment is really a small punishment. Store manager, the reinforcements you mentioned. Tessai Tsakabashi's dark forehead was constantly dripping with sweat. Where the hell is it? Just when he asked, Urahara Kisuke suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. A light flashed in his eyes and whispered in a cheerful tone, "Coming." As his voice fell, a simple style boundary door suddenly opened, and majestic and powerful Ryatsu rushed out from it, covering the entire city in an instant, and even had the tendency to compete with Shendu Ryatsu. Shendu also stopped his current actions and looked towards the boundary crossing gate not far away. Is it such a big battle? I'm really flattered. After seeing clearly the figures coming out, even Shendu was a little surprised. Captain Aizen Suk of the 5th Division, Byakuya Kichiki, the captain of the 6th Division, Kairako Shunsui, the captain of the 7th Division, Kamamura Sajin, the captain of the 8th Division, and Ishin Shiba, the captain of the 10th Division. Nearly half of Godei 13's high-end combat power has appeared in this world. Judging from their serious expressions, it looked like a war was about to begin. Hey, we finally meet. Kairaka Shunsui placed one hand on the dart and looked at Shendu carefully, as if he wanted to carve his appearance into his mind. King of Hueco Mundo, Your Majesty Shendu. From the information he got from Aizen, he had some understanding of Shendu. And Soul Society's most wanted, Urahara Kisuke and Tessai Tsakabashi. Kairako Shunsui remembered Shindu's appearance and looked further away. There seems to be Hirako and Kensei's Ryatsu over there, and, while he was looking around, he saw the remaining visored members, as well as Yadumura Lisa. Kairako Shunsui still feels very guilty for his vice-captain. After all, if it weren't for his order, Yadumura Lisa wouldn't have ended up like this. Just like Yadumura Lisa didn't show any kind words to him either. Your Majesty Shendu, we meet again. Aizen spoke first, not wanting to reveal all the plans because he was not active enough. Although there is Kaika Suigetsu, there's no need to use it in such a small place. Shendu obviously has no intention of getting rid of all Aizen plans. A tiger got mixed up among a group of cats. Only in this way will it be more interesting. Otherwise, it would be too boring. Captain Aizen seems to still have the same style. Shendu was not stingy with compliments, as if reminiscing with old friends. Your Majesty Shendu is so complimentary. Aizen leaned forward slightly, his right hand already pressed on the sword and dart, as if he was about to take action. The way the two of them talked made several captains around them stare at them suspiciously, as if they were suspecting that they had some improper relationship. Captain Aizen seems to be very familiar with this guy. Shiba rubbed his chin intently and asked thoughtfully, I almost died in Shendu's hands. An embarrassed smile appeared on Aizen's face. If you hadn't used Kaika Suigetsu's ability to disrupt his vision in time, you might not be able to see me now. In his lies, Kaika Suigetsu is a flowing water-type Zampakit, capable of creating water and mist to disrupt enemies, causing them to kill each other. If it just interferes with the line of sight, it seems that it can be easily done. Shiba Yishin had no doubts about this. Hurry up and get rid of this guy. Byakuya Kuchiki showed no respect for his senior captains. The handsome and fair face was full of arrogance and disdain. As the current head of the Kuchiki family, 3.2, he seems to have this proud qualification. There are other matters at Kuchiki's house that I need to go back to deal with. Hearing this, Kamamura Sajin, who was wearing a huge mask, immediately issued a kind reminder. Don't underestimate this king of Hueco Mundo. In the intelligence, Shendu is the real Vasto Lord, and he seems to have made new breakthroughs in strength. In this regard, Shendu did not hesitate to reveal a little bit of information about himself and Hueco Mundo. It's not just me. Scarlet eyes looked over everyone, showing no trace of timidity. Shendu smiled and said slowly, more than 90% of the Ajuchas in Hueco Mundo have already achieved this breakthrough in strength. For this, we named it Arancarization.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.